Good evening. We'll go ahead and call the August 12th meeting of the Board of Zoning Appeals meeting to order. Ms. Parker will read the opening statement.
We would like to welcome all present to the meeting of the Board of Zoning Appeals. Mr. Jeff Carson is serving as chairman this evening. The format for this meeting is as follows. As each application is called, we would ask that all those both for and against to please come to the front of the room. The applicant will make the opening statement explaining the proposal. Please note that the applicant will be given 15 minutes to present their case. The 15 minutes includes the applicant and any consultants and other members of the applicant's team. Members of the board will then address any questions they may have to the applicant. Any persons wishing to speak in favor will be allowed to do so at that time. Then those persons in opposition will be allowed to make their statements and ask questions. Please note that each member of the public who wishes to speak, either for or against the application, will be given 5 minutes to express their opinions. Time may not be shared between speakers. A speaker at the podium may request to extend their time, and the board may, by 2/3 majority vote, extend any speaker's time in 5-minute increments. The applicant will then answer questions and make a closing statement. All statements at the meeting shall be directed to the board, and cross-conversation among those in attendance is prohibited. Questions between opposing parties shall be directed first to the chairman, who may then ask the proper person to answer, such answer being directed to the board. The public hearing portion of the meeting will then be closed, and the public will only be allowed to address the board if a question is directed to them. The staff will then make their comments and recommendation. The board will discuss the application and make their decision. A brief statement of the reason for the motion will precede the making of the motion. Motions to approve shall include the staff stipulations unless otherwise stated in the motion. Also, all items or exhibits submitted and/or shown either to the board or staff during the hearing will be retained and become part of the official record of these proceedings. The board is required to disclose contacts with regard to any item on the agenda. Before each item, I will ask if any contacts have been made, and members of the board will be asked to disclose their contacts at that time. We ask that anyone with a cell phone to please turn them off or switch to non-audio so you will not disturb the meeting. Our first item on the agenda tonight is Appeal Number 2328, Ralph D. Pratt, for property at 3616 North 65th Street. At this time, does any member of the board have any contact to disclose with regard to this application?
No.
All those for and against, please come to the front of the room.
Good evening.
Good evening, I'm
Go
Ralph
ahead.
Pratt,
And give us your address, please, for the record, and tell us about your request.
3616 North 65th Street, Kansas City, Kansas. And I just went a 1,200 square foot garage versus a 1,000 square foot. With a 3-car garage, I've got some older cars.
Okay, could you move a little closer to the mic there?
Yes, I've got I just want a 3-car garage, I've got some older cars I want to keep in there. And I'm going to be able to get all my stuff in there. And we do not have an attached garage, so it'll be the only one.
Okay. Are there any questions for the petitioner? Seeing none, we'll open up the public portion of the meeting. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of or opposed to this request? Seeing none, we'll close the public portion of the meeting. We'll get staff comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'd recommend approval.
Are there any questions for staff? Seeing none, we'll stand for a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Curtis, seconded by Commissioner Huey. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Ernst?
Aye.
Huey?
Aye.
Jones?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Pauly?
Aye.
Reasons?
Aye.
Serta?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to approve this appeal, subject to the staff's comments and suggestions, passes 7 in favor and none opposed.
Great, thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Our next appeal is number 2338, Chris Turpin for property at 10770 Parallel Parkway. Does any member of the board have any contact to disclose with regard to this case?
No.
Yes. I spoke with Josh Pritchard briefly about it.
Okay. Did you have anything you needed to disclose to the commission? Okay. All those for and against, please come to the front of the room.
Good evening.
Hey, good evening. As she was saying, Josh Pritchard, owner-operator over here at Chick-fil-A Plaza Speedway. So Chris Turpin and Essentia Architecture has put together a plan for a drive-through canopy for us. And so I have some renderings if you guys would like to look at them.
Okay, you want to go ahead and
Sure.
give those to staff? They'll
So in the rendering there, it basically talks a little bit about the materials that will be used. And it gives you a brief description or photo of what we're trying to do over there. So basically what we're trying to do is create some drive-through canopies that cover our employees as they're outside. So it protects them from the elements, the heat, as well as the extreme cold. So we're, as part of the plan, we'll have heaters suspended above the canopies. So the canopies, basically, the cars will drive underneath in two sections of the drive-through. And again, heaters as well as fans with misters for the summertime. We currently take orders in the drive-through outside as well. We're just trying to provide a little bit of protection for the employee, a little better experience for the guest. So.
Are there any questions for the petitioner?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
so in the staff report, we noted that the material for the canopy supports had to be masonry, and we have pictures of what was supplied by your architect that meets that requirement. That's not reflected in this picture, so are you changing what you're saying you're going to do? Or
Excuse me, I'm sorry. So we're not changing. This is the last drawing, so I don't have the updated photo. The updated photo was sent.
Correct, it's in the staff report. I just wanted to make sure that
Yes, sir, I'm sorry.
we didn't have a conflict there.
No, sir. It will be masonry to match the building.
So the columns will be
Yes, sir,
masonry?
it'll be wrapped.
Okay. Any questions for petitioner? Okay, seeing none, we'll open to the public portion of the meeting. Is there anyone in the audience who wants to speak in favor of or in opposition to this request? Seeing none, we'll close the public portion of the meeting. We'll get staff comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'd recommend approval subject to the stipulations in the staff report.
Any questions for staff? Seeing none, we'll stand for a motion.
Motion to approve?
Motion approved by Commissioner Serta, seconded by Commissioner Jones. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Ernst?
Aye.
Huey?
Aye.
Jones?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Pauly?
Aye.
Reasons?
Aye.
Serta.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to approve this appeal with the staff stipulations passes 7 in favor and none opposed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Our next appeal is number 2339 Pizza Hut for property at 2815 South 47th Street. Does any member of the board have any contact to disclose with regard to this application?
No.
All those for and against, please come to the front of the room.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Scott Hushin. I'm with Infinity Sign Systems. My address is 4900 Lister Avenue, Kansas City, Missouri, 64130. I'm here on behalf of MPC, who is the owner, operator, who's here with me today, to add an additional sign to the southeast corner of this building that they recently required from Little Caesars. Prior to Pizza Hut being in here, Little Caesars did have a sign on the southeast side of this building, and in 2016, they've changed the code to allow multi-tenant signs to have one sign only. So being that this is an end cap, they're requesting to have an additional sign on the southeast side that faces Shawnee Drive.
Okay, are there any questions for the petitioner? So you're wanting a sign on the front of the building and on the side?
The sign on the front of the building has already been approved. This is an additional sign on the
Correct.
southeast side.
So you'll have two?
Yes, sir.
Gotcha. Any questions for the petitioner? Seeing none, we'll open up the public portion of the meeting. Get anybody who would like to speak in favor of or in opposition to this request, please come forward. Seeing none, we'll close the public portion. We'll get staff comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'd recommend approval, subject to the stipulations of the staff report. And I would note that this seems like a fairly straightforward case. I'm going to ask that when we move the zoning code amendment through, the rewrite of the zoning code, that this part will be fixed in the sign code, so we don't have to do any more of these.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for staff? Seeing none, we'll stand for a motion.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Curtis, seconded by Commissioner Jones. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Ernst,
Aye.
Huey,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Pauly,
Aye.
Reasons,
Aye.
Serta.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to approve this application, subject to the staff's comments and suggestions, passes 7 in favor and none opposed.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Our next appeal is number 2340, Lloyd Clay, for property at 7852 Leavenworth Road. Does any member of the commission have any contact disclosed with regard to this application?
No.
All those for and against, please come to the front of the room.
Good evening.
Tom Steibel, 509 Armstrong, here representing Lloyd Clay. I wanted to ask that this matter be set over until September. The reason is that that I had, when I sent in my comments on the special use permit, I thought I had attached the comments to this, to the comments to their draft report, and I had not. I had only sent in the comments for the special use permit that is coming up on the special use agenda. And so the staff has not had an opportunity to look at those. You have not had an opportunity to look at those, and so I would ask that it be set over so that we could all have the same information and to make a more considered decision.
Are there any questions for the petitioner on the request for holdover? Okay, seeing none, we will open up the public portion of the meeting to see if there's anyone here to speak in favor of or in opposition to the request. Please come forward. Seeing none, we'll close the public portion and we'll get staff comment on the request for holdover.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just note that we will reopen the public hearing when it's heard next month, but that would be recommending holdover to September 9th.
Any questions for staff? Okay, seeing none, we'll stand for a motion.
Move to hold over to September 9th.
Second.
Motion to hold over to September 9th made by Commissioner Curtis, seconded by Commissioner Miller. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Ernst,
Aye.
Huey,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Pauly,
Aye.
Reasons,
Aye.
Serta.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to hold over this appeal until the September 9th meeting passes 7 in favor and none opposed.
Thank you. We'll see you next month.
Mr. Chairman, our next appeal is number 2341, Nicole Henson, for property at 1830 Quindaro Boulevard. Does any member of the board have any contact to disclose with regard to this case?
No.
All those for and against, please come to the front of the room.
Good evening.
Good evening. I am Nicole Henson, and I'm here requesting a variance for 1830 Quindaro for a carport and my wrought iron fence at the triangle at the corner. There is a discrepancy in the ordinance where it says that we can be 20 feet from the site triangle in two references and 15 feet in another. And so we are requesting to go with the 15 because at 20 feet, it kind of pushes us so far into the property where our fence would be. At the corner of the property, it's already a lot, because I think the concern is maybe people's ability to view from the corner, but it's already so far back. And then in addition to that, we're going to have a detailing area on the property. And so we have a carport, and we need a two-car carport. And the way that puts us also around 15 feet from the setback, opposed to the 20 feet that's required. And so I'm requesting permission to do that.
Okay, and for the record, could you please give us your address?
1830 Quindaro Boulevard.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions for the petitioner? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to the public portion of the meeting. Is there anyone in the audience that wants to speak in favor of or in opposition to this request? Seeing none, we'll close the public portion of the meeting. We'll get staff comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to note that she is correct, that on the planning side of the code, the site triangle says 20 feet, and on the public works side, it says 15 feet. That's something else we'll correct in the new code, but until we get it corrected, we have to use this process. We'd recommend approval of the variances requested.
Are there any questions for staff? Seeing none, we'll stand for a motion. Motion to approve by Commissioner Jones, seconded by Commissioner Miller. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Ernst,
Aye.
Huey,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Pauly,
Aye.
Reasons,
Aye.
Serta.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to approve this appeal, subject to the staff's comments and suggestions, passes 7 in favor and none opposed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next appeal is number 2342, Chris Thurston, for property at 2870 West 47th Avenue. Does any member of the board have any contact to disclose with regard to this case?
No.
I do. Contacted by Aaron Stroika with Rosedale Development to indicate their support.
Same.
Thank you. Good evening. Go ahead, give us your name and address. Tell us about your request.
So it's actually Curtis Thurston.
Curtis Thurston?
Yes, Curtis. And my address is 8524 Lee Boulevard, Leawood, Kansas, 66206. And basically what I'm looking to do is get a parking variance for the address of 2870 West 47th Avenue, which was previously a H&R Block, and I'm looking to switch it over to an ice cream shop. And the Northwood Shopping Center has, I believe it's 220 spaces, and we're looking for a parking variance to allow for another eatery going in there and allowing for the less amount of spaces that are currently available.
Okay, are there any questions for the petitioner?
Just one quick one. Is that along the west face
Is it west facing?
shopping center? No. I mean, is it along the west side?
It's on the west side, yes.
West side, okay. Thanks.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll open up the public portion of the meeting. Is there anyone in the audience that wants to speak in favor of or in opposition to this request? Seeing none, we'll close the public portion of the meeting and we'll get staff comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'd recommend approval.
Any questions for staff? Seeing none, we'll stand for a motion.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Serta, seconded by Commissioner Huey. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Ernst,
Aye.
Huey,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Pauly,
Aye.
Reasons,
Aye.
Serta.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to approve this appeal, subject to the staff's comments and suggestions, passes 7 in favor and none opposed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, that concludes the Board of Zoning Appeals agenda.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting of Board of Zoning Appeals, and we will reconvene at 6:30 for the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Yes.
Michael? Would you take the Board of Zoning Appeals agendas out of the box now?
Janet enjoyed the ranch. Oh, you did, okay.
Have you been looking for your onesie? Have you been looking for your onesie? don't have a ton of people here, so. Let the boss man go. He's lost. Yes, I am.
Good evening. We'll go ahead and call the August 12th meeting of the City Planning Commission to order. Ms. Parker will read the opening statement.
Mr. Chairman, before I read the opening statement, at the Board of Zoning Appeals meeting, we held over the appeal for Mr. Clay. There's a corresponding special use permit on the Planning Commission agenda, and we're going to move that to the front of the agenda so the representative can come forward and request that that application also be held over.
Okay, thank you.
That special use permit application, SP 2019-50, Lloyd Clay, special use permit for the temporary use of land to park salt plow trucks when not in use at 7852 Leavenworth Road. Does any member of the commission have any contact to disclose with regard to this case?
No.
All those for and against, please come to the front of the room.
Go ahead and give us your name and address again, Mr. Clay, for the record.
Thomas Steibel for Lloyd Clay, 509 Armstrong, Kansas City, Kansas, 66101.
Okay, and you're wanting to request a holdover to the next month meeting, is
I
that
am-
correct?
I am, yes, I am. Thank you, and I apologize for the inconvenience.
Okay, are there any questions for the petitioner? Okay, seeing none, we will go ahead and open up the public portion of the meeting just to see if there's anyone here to speak or in favor of or in opposition to this request. If there are, please come forward. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and get staff comment on the request to hold over.
Would recommend holdover till September 9th.
Any questions for staff? Seeing none, stand for a motion.
Move to hold over to September 9th.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Serta to hold over, seconded by Commissioner Miller. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Ernst?
Aye.
Ewing? Aye. Jones?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Pauly?
Aye.
Reasons?
Aye.
Serta.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to hold over this special use permit until the September 9th meeting passes 7 in favor and none opposed.
Okay, thank you. We'll see you on September 9th.
We would like to welcome all present to the meeting of the City Planning Commission. Mr. Jeff Carson is serving as chairman this evening. The Planning Commission is a voluntary body of citizens which will review each zoning proposal. For all change of zones, special use permits, vacations, and preliminary plan reviews on tonight's agenda, the Planning Commission makes recommendations to the Unified Government Board of Commissioners, who will then make the final decisions on Thursday, August 29th, 2019. For final plats and final plan reviews heard tonight, the Planning Commission's decision is final, and there will not be another hearing. The format for this evening's meeting is as follows. As each application is called, we would ask that all those, both for and against, to please come to the front of the room. The applicant will make the opening statement explaining the proposal. Please note that the applicant will be given 15 minutes to present their case. The 15 minutes includes the applicant, consultants, and other members of the applicant's team. Members of the Planning Commission will then address any questions they may have to the applicant. Any persons wishing to speak in favor will be allowed to do so at that time. Then those persons in opposition will be allowed to make their statements and ask questions. Please note that each member of the public who wishes to speak will be given 5 minutes to express their opinions. Time may not be shared between speakers. A speaker at the podium may request to extend their time, and the Planning Commission may, by 2/3 majority vote, extend any speaker's time in 5-minute increments. The applicant will then answer questions and make a closing statement. The public hearing portion of the meeting will be closed, and the public will only be allowed to address the commission if a question is directed to them. The Planning Commission will discuss the application and make their recommendation. Also, all items or exhibits submitted and/or shown either to the Planning Commission or staff during the hearing will be retained and become part of the official record of these proceedings. If persons in opposition want to formally protest a change of zone or special use permit, a means is available by a legal protest petition, which can be obtained along with the necessary instructions by calling the Urban Planning and Land Use Department at 573-5750 tomorrow morning. Any application receiving a unanimous vote of recommendation by the Planning Commission will appear on the consent agenda of the Unified Government Board of Commissioners. Unless there is a request to remove an item from the consent agenda by the applicant, a member of the Unified Government Commission, or other interested parties, the Planning Commission's recommendation will be adopted. The consent agenda is heard at the beginning of the meeting at 7 p.m. If you are interested in an item, you should appear promptly on Thursday, August 29, 2019, at 7 p.m. to see what action is taken or to ask that it be removed from the consent agenda. The Planning Commission will also have a consent agenda as part of their meeting this evening. The consent agenda is the first part of the agenda. Items on the consent agenda are final plats, final plans, or special use permit renewals that have received a staff recommendation to approve. Unless there is a request to remove an item from the consent agenda by the applicant, a member of the staff, a member of the Planning Commission, or other interested parties, the staff recommendation on all of the items on the consent agenda will be adopted by the Planning Commission at one time. I will read a list of agenda items on the consent agenda, and when I have completed the list, the chairman will ask if there are any requests to remove items. This is your time to come to the microphone and request that an item be removed from the consent agenda if you do not agree with the staff recommendation. All items not removed from the consent agenda will be approved by the commission with the staff recommendation. The Planning Commission is required to disclose contacts about any item on the Planning Commission agenda. Before each item, I will ask if any contacts have been made, and members of the commission will be asked to disclose those contacts at that time. We appreciate the attendance of those here this evening, and we recognize the seriousness of each case and each person's opinions, but would like to request that each side keep their comments as concise as possible. Your opinions will be forwarded to the governing body for their consideration in making a final decision. In addition, those who receive notices for this evening's hearing will again receive them for the hearing on Thursday, August 29th, 2019. We ask that anyone with a cell phone to please turn them off or switch to non-audio so you will not disturb the meeting. I will now read the items on the consent agenda. Consideration of the July 8, 2019 City Planning Commission minutes. Special use permit application SP 2019-83, Darrell Evers. Renewal of a special use permit for a liquor store at 2862 West 47th Avenue. Special use permit SP 2019-86, Andrew Morgan's. Renewal of a home occupation special use permit for an Airbnb at 616 Elizabeth Avenue. Special use permit application SP 2019-92, Joe Hedrick with Cactus Bed Properties LLC. Renewal of a special use permit for a short-term rental Airbnb at 3841 Lloyd Street. Special Use Permit SP 2019-94. Will Anderson with BHC Roads for Frank Perry. Renewal of a special use permit for the temporary use of land for a security office trailer at 8130 Caw Drive. Plan review application PR 2019-19. Logan Hayes. Final plan review for an addition to an existing restaurant at 3300 Rainbow Boulevard. The items I have read are on the consent agenda. At this time, does any member of the commission wish to disclose any contact on any of these items?
No.
Please include the following items as part of the record for all of the items on the consent agenda. The city's currently adopted zoning and subdivision regulations, the official zoning map for the area in question, the city's currently adopted master plan for the area in question, the staff report and attachments dated August 12, 2019, the application and other documents, plans, pictures, and maps submitted by the applicant in furtherance of the case and contained in the official file, the notice in the Echo for the special use permit, and the notices to property owners. The commission will vote to approve in one vote these items unless someone comes forward and asks that an item be removed from the consent agenda.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to remove any one of the items from the consent agenda for special consideration? Okay, seeing none, is there anyone on the commission that would like to have anything removed? Okay, seeing none, I will stand for a motion on the approval of the consent agenda.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve the consent agenda made by Commissioner Curtis, seconded by Commissioner Miller. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Ernst?
Aye.
Huey?
Aye.
Jones?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Pauling?
Aye.
Reasons?
Aye.
Serta.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to approve the items on the consent agenda with the staff comments and suggestions passes 7 in favor and none opposed.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I will note that the special use permit renewals will go before the Board of Commissioners on Thursday, August the 29th at 7 p.m. That now completes the consent agenda, and the commission will move on to the non-consent agenda. The commission will request that when an applicant hears their application being called, that they move forward to the microphone along with all those for and against in order to keep the meeting moving. Our first application is change of zone application 3199. Change of zone from R1 Single Family District to AG Agriculture District for an accessory building at 7615 Swartz Road. Please include the following items as part of the record for this case: the city's currently adopted zoning and subdivision regulations, the official zoning map for the area in question, the city's currently adopted master plan for the area in question, the staff report and attachments dated August 12, 2019, the application and other documents, plans, pictures, and maps submitted by the applicant in furtherance of the case and contained in the official file, the notice in the Wyandotte Echo dated July 18, 2019, and the notices to property owners dated July 11, 2019. Does any member of the commission have any contact to disclose with regard to this application?
No.
All those for and against, please come to the front of the room.
Good evening. Go ahead and give us your name and address and tell us about your project.
Hi, my name is Charles Mestaw. I live at 7615 Swartz Road, Kansas City, Kansas. I bought this property approximately 6 years ago, and it had been in my family 50 years prior to that. And I went to get a permit to build a barn, and come to find out it was zoned residential. And with residential, you're only allowed to have one outbuilding. So in order for me to build a barn, I have to tear down the existing barn, which is part of the original house that was built back in 1916 I was hoping to preserve. So I'm asking to rezone that to agriculture so I can build another pole barn for my tractors, backhoe, stuff like that.
Okay. Any questions for the petitioner? Okay, seeing none, we'll open up the public portion of the meeting. Is there anyone in the audience that wants to speak in favor of or in opposition to this request? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and get staff comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'd recommend approval, subject to the stipulations.
Any questions for staff? Seeing none, we'll stand for a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Huey, seconded by Commissioner Serta. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Ernst,
Aye.
Huey,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Pauly,
Aye.
Reasons,
Aye.
Serta.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to recommend approval of this change of zone application, subject to the staff's comments and suggestions, passes 7 in favor and none opposed.
Okay, thank you. This will be heard again once again on August 29th in this room.
All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Our next change of zone is number 3200, Michael D. Foster with Foster and Associates. Change of zone from C1 Limited Business District to C3 Commercial District to allow apartments over commercial space at 3101 Strong Avenue. Please include the following items as part of the record for this case: the city's currently adopted zoning and subdivision regulations, the official zoning map for the area in question, the city's currently adopted master plan for the area in question, the staff report and attachments dated August 12, 2019, the application and other documents, plans, pictures, and maps submitted by the applicant in furtherance of the case and contained in the official file, the notice in the Wyandotte Echo dated July 18, 2019, and the notices to property owners dated July 11, 2019. Does any member of the commission have any contact to disclose with regard to this case?
No.
All those for and against, please come to the front of the room.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Go ahead and give us your name and address. Tell us about your project.
Lonnie Shanks. I'm the owner of JC Architects. My address is 15105 Joler Creek Road, Camden Point, Missouri, 64018. I have a client that owns a building at 3101 Strong Avenue. He intends to convert the upstairs into a personal residence, and he would like the zoning change from C1 to C3.
Okay, are there any questions for the petitioner? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and open up the public portion of the meeting. Is there anyone who wants to speak in favor of or in opposition to this request? Seeing none, we'll close the public portion of the meeting. We'll get staff comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'd recommend approval, subject to the stipulations in the staff report.
Any questions for staff? Seeing none, we'll stand for a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Miller, seconded by Commissioner Pauly. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ernst,
Aye.
Huey,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Pauly,
Aye.
Reasons,
Aye.
Serta.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to recommend approval of this change of zone application, and that will be to CP3 Planned Commercial District, subject to the staff stipulations, passes 7 in favor and none opposed.
Thank you. This will be heard again on August 29th.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have 3 items that we're going to hear together. Master Plan Amendment, MP 2019-5, Michael Osborne with Call Valley Engineering. Master Plan Amendment from public, semi-public to urban residential, citywide master plan. And change of zone application 3201, change of zone from R1B Single Family District to RP2B Two Family District for a residential duplex subdivision, and 7-day Adventist housing preliminary plat. All 3 of these applications are at 3301 Garfield Avenue. Please include the following items as part of the record for this case: the city's currently adopted zoning and subdivision regulations, the official zoning map for the area in question, the city's currently adopted master plan for the area in question, the staff report and attachments dated August 12, 2019, the application and other documents, plans, pictures, and maps submitted by the applicant in furtherance of the case and contained in the official file, the notice in the Wyandotte Echo dated July 18, 2019, for the master plan amendment and change of zone application, and the notices to property owners dated July 11, 2019. Does any member of the commission have any contact to disclose with regard to this case?
No. No. Mr. Jones?
I communicated with
Commissioner Townsend about one of her constituents having contacted her about this petition. Okay. Anyone else? All those for and against, please come to the front of the room.
Good evening. Go ahead and give us your name and address and tell us about your project.
Good evening, Chairman and fellow commissioners. My name is Michael Osborne with Call Valley Engineering. We represent the Central States Commission for the Seventh Day Central States Conference for the Seventh Day Adventists. They are the current landowner of the property and have been since 1985. They have desired to develop part of their property into age-restricted housing element that will allow them to provide housing for both current neighbors and others that may want to move into the neighborhood. Basically, they have 4.5 acres, which would be the eastern portion of their property on the south side of Garfield, east of 33rd Street there. They have currently a youth fellowship facility on the far eastern portion of the property. The entire property is roughly 8 acres to 10 acres. We're looking at incorporating the eastern 4.5 acres into a 12-building, 24-unit duplex-style age-restricted housing development. At the end of the day, this is currently zoned R1B. We're obviously here for a rezoning to take us to R2B. The goal with that is to allow us to build attached homes in a very similar manner to what would be standard single family, other than the buildings themselves, 2 units are attached with a common party wall down the center. The layout we've put in place plats 12 lots that would be serviced on all sides on all lots by public streets. Currently, you have a public street down 33rd Street. We don't have anything facing out on Garfield. And then we would be putting in a new street down the center of the 4.36 acre parcel with residential lots on either side. When we look at the density of the development that we're putting in place, we're at actually only 68% of what the density could be under its current zoning of R1B. In fact, if we opted to just build single-family homes as opposed to attached homes, the rezoning portion of this hearing would not be here, and we would not have to deal with that side of it. But the fact that as we look at some of our aging citizens, myself included, many of them do not like to live isolated in an individual home. Many like to live in a more attached condition, and we have found through various projects that not only has the Seventh-day Adventist group been a part of, but the development team, which is under the Seventh-day Adventists, have found that historically these properties and types of developments work better in attached, whether it be duplexes we're proposing here, townhome in some other areas, or even larger scale multifamily residential developments. All of that being said, looking at the characteristic of this site itself, we felt that it was best suited for the duplex style development that we have proposed this evening, which ultimately yielded the need to go from an R1B zoning to an R2B zoning. With that, we've also, as you know, have in front of you a preliminary plat. The preliminary plat shows that we are intending to put a public street in. We're extending public infrastructure as needed for the development itself, and we're making various improvements to the area. At the end of the day, we feel that this will be a vast upgrade to the area. The buildings being constructed are in excess of $150,000 per side, high quality, single-story slab-on-grade units with a single-car garage. Again, those elements themselves are not directly germane to the rezoning application or the preliminary plat, just additional information to help you understand the scope of the project that we have before you this evening. With that, we've worked things out with staff, we think, so far as the arrangement of the preliminary plat, the placement of the units and buildings on the site itself, and ultimately the placement of infrastructure and how it will interface with the current infrastructure. We feel that we're in full compliance with all of your subdivision regulations associated with the preliminary plat. As we've reviewed the staff comments, we've responded to all except for the most recent Public Works elements that are associated with the report. I believe we comply with everything there, with the minor exception that we just found out today they would desire a level 1 traffic study. We are in the process of procuring that, and we will have that before we will be in front of the city council with this project itself. I know that that's not a requirement at this time, but I would like to show that at the end of the day, what ends up being 18 units feeding out onto Garfield from our new road will not be any increase to the traffic counts in the area that would be detrimental to the operation of the current infrastructure that exists. The other 6 units, as I said, feed out onto 33rd Street, as the homes across the street do. We basically line up similarly with the number of units that would be on the other side of the street with us. And with that, we concur with all of staff's comments, and I believe have responded to all except for, of course, the traffic studies I've outlined. With me here tonight is part of the development team. I have Dwayne Williams with Central States Conference. I have Tonya Anderson with the Central States Conference. Dave Osborne, part of the development team, handling most of the construction side and some of the infrastructure development. No relation, different spelling. And Bill Canton, who's also part of the development team in procuring different elements of funding and whatnot that go with the project. They would be here to answer any questions that you may have regarding the project, or as I said, I'm ready to stand for any questions that you may have. And I thank you for your time.
All right, thank you. Before we go to questions, I'm going to go to legal counsel who would like to make a statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just wanted to remind the commission that the use of state or federal tax credits and the income of individuals who may reside at a property are not proper factors for the Planning Commission to take into account. When deciding on a recommendation for this application, the Planning Commission should evaluate it based on the normal golden factors and criteria set forth in the Unified Government Code. And any statements made by opponents or supporters based on the financing involved or the income of residents should not be considered by the commission in their decision.
Thank you. Are there any questions for legal counsel? Okay, thank you. We'll go ahead and open up questions for the petitioner. Commissioner Serta?
I have 2. Sir, can you, on the preliminary plat, just want to clarify, make sure I understand this. There is what looks like, I can't tell if it's a pad or a small structure adjacent to the cul-de-sac?
Yes, that is in what we'll consider to be our private parkland, and part of the amenities of the development itself would be a gazebo and other possible amenities, barbecue grill, things of that nature for the residents to come down and use. It's kind of a nice wooded setting there. Our goal is to minimize the impact to the current vegetation down there, while we do have a partial, or our detention pond associated with the development in that area too. We're gonna do everything we can to minimize the impact and make it a park setting, and then replant as needed to make it even more of a park setting than would be in its current state.
Okay. The other question I had is, will this be a self-managed development, or will you have an on-site property manager that's a third-party entity?
Central States is managed themselves, aren't they?
They're co-property management with Universal Management here in Kansas City.
Okay, I don't know if you heard that, but it's Central States who is the property owner themselves, co-managing with Universal Property Management here in Kansas City.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Other questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I have one. I think that it's fair to say that this is a very similar development to Pemberton Place out on 82nd, just north of State, between State and Parallel. Are you familiar with that, Mr. Osborne?
I am not.
Just for the commission, I believe it's very similar, same type of development proposal, and it would be very similar to that, although this one would be required to have full street lights and not just the lighting from the houses.
Okay. Other questions? I just have one. Going back to the common ground that we were just talking about, is that land not buildable in terms of putting another unit?
It's very close to, I mean, if we wanted to add another 2 units, we could have probably adjusted the lots and made that piece work. But we felt, well, one, our project is set at 24 units, and so with that, we've laid that out in what we feel the best orientation, and that piece of ground in that corner would be one of the more difficult pieces, and does yield itself topography-wise to facilitate the detention area the best on the site. So the combination of those factors put us in that regard. And one thing I did fail to mention is that the grounds themselves, not just the common parkland, but the grounds around all of the units are commonly maintained. They're not held to the individual. So you'll have a nice, finished, maintained property as opposed to this yard overgrown or that yard overgrown and those types of issues. So it will be ultimately maintained in a very nice manner in a sole maintenance condition.
Okay, one other question regarding the over 55 requirement. Are the declarations set up that all residents within the unit must be 55, or can they have guests that are under that age stay at the property?
Just one.
I'm sorry?
Just one
They can have
resident
one guest?
at the age of 55 or older.
One must be over 55?
Correct.
Anybody else can be under 55? Could be, yes. And is there a number of occupants that,
That there are. There are minimum, these are all 2 bedrooms if I remember right. So it's a maximum of 4 occupants per building if I remember, but typically not that many. Right. You could, under the statutes associated with the financing, not that we're going to go down that road in this issue, but you could have as many as 4 occupants with the 2-bedroom unit itself, but very rarely do we ever see that. And in fact, most instances, as we look historically at these projects, you have sometimes one, many times a widower, something of that nature. They like having the 2nd bedroom for visitors, their grandchildren, things of that nature to come. And then, of course, the secondary condition of a married couple moving in. They like that 2nd bedroom both for visitors and, to have an office, something of that nature. They're slightly over 1,000 square feet, if I remember right, per side. So that they are fairly well-sized, but as we all know, it's nice to have that 2nd bedroom.
but it is possible that somebody could have 4 people in the unit where only one would have to be 55 and everybody else could be under. So you could have one person, and then you could have children, you could have teenagers, you could have 3 other individuals that do not meet the age requirement in the unit.
That is my understanding of the regulations as they've.
When you say regulations, are you saying regulations in accordance with what? Are you talking about restrictions?
Yes, sir.
Because certain
With
age restrictions.
with the restrictions that are defined by the state of Kansas.
Well, I know there are other developments that do not allow people under a certain age in an age-restricted community, other than for temporary purposes.
I understand that, and I agree with that. And
Because I know it doesn't always happen, but you're talking about, how many units here? We're talking about 24 units. 24 units, 4 people. All of a sudden, we're talking about 90-some-odd people, of which only 12 have to be 55 and older. And then
24.
24 have to be 55 and older, and then everybody else wouldn't have to be.
that is what they've expressed.
Okay.
I understand your point.
Okay, no problem. Commissioner Jones, do you have a question?
I do. So back to the property manager, is the property manager going to live on site?
Generally not.
And then the grounds maintenance that you talked about, is that included as a part of the lease price
Correct.
to where everybody would automatically have it?
Yes.
Can you answer my other question?
Other questions? Okay. Seeing none, we will open up the public portion of the meeting. Is there anyone in the audience that wants to speak in favor of this project? Please come forward. Okay, is there anyone who wants to speak in opposition? Please give us your name and address.
Yes, my name is Michaela Turner. I live at 3313 Richmond Avenue. I grew up in this neighborhood. My grandmother, mother, and I moved out there in '89 when I was 5 years old. And we've come to really, we're a small neighborhood where we all know one another. A lot of us has lived there for a very long time. And this is not our first go-round with the Central State Conference. I remember this being a park where people would come and play. I played there myself. Families can just hang out, fly kites. It was very peaceful, and it was very well maintained because at the time that it was being maintained by the monks. I believe that maybe the archdiocese, a part of them, before the SDA church moved in. Since then, with their conferences that they have at this community center, which they've made it quite clear that if you're not a part of the SDA church, you're not allowed to be there. We've had issues with people coming for the conference, coming on our properties. I've had times where I've seen people wandering around on my property. And I've went around and spoke to neighbors. The neighbors on both Richmond Avenue, 33rd Street, also 36th Street, had no idea that this was going to happen. We recently found out about it and had a neighborhood meeting about it, and apparently this was a 9-year plan, which we find it very inconsiderate, considering the fact that nobody lives in the immediate area, didn't really come out and consult with us about it. And I've actually consulted with some neighbors who live on 33rd Street who said that ever since that community center went up, they're still having plumbing issues with flooding in their basements. We police ourselves in this small community that we have. Anyone who, trouble that comes in or anyone unfamiliar, we keep that out. And to have this, according to them, is a senior living facility, which I feel the demographics are completely off because at 55 you're middle age, you're not senior citizen until you're 65. And then moving in other people who are maybe my age and younger, it takes away our privacy, our peace of mind, because, and it doesn't really serve anybody within our community except for theirs. Now, if they're really wanting to, with servitude and serve the community, why not convert that into an updated playground, which is available? There's children who live in our neighborhood who I've seen trying to ride their bikes in the streets, passing cars, still play in that area. Update that so they can have a place to go, or we can have a place to go and maybe sit down and have a conversation. It's just, to me, seems as though it's making it even more exclusive than what it really is. And it's not fair, and I've actually consulted to people, everyone in my neighborhood. No one is happy about this at all.
Okay.
So,
Thank you very much.
thank you for your time.
Question, excuse me, ma'am, could you step back to the podium? We have a question for you.
Yes.
Ms. Turner, I'd like to know your perspective on, is it your understanding that this would or would not serve the community in the respect that it's open in terms of the tenants? It's an open application process to others, for example, other than the SDA community?
It is to my belief that it will not serve the community because initially when the quasi-community center was put up, which is really a youth development center, and there is a sign that says, that has a contact number if you want to rent it for any reason. I've had neighbors who have actually went to the church and asked to rent out the property and were told no. They have events all the time. We're excluded from that. We get no invitations to come there, and if you do go there, you're looked down upon. And it's rude and kind of disheartening. I mean, we get invitations from other surrounding churches that none of us are a part of, but it just seems as though that if you're not a part of the SDA church in any way, shape, or form, you're excluded. And that is one example. I remember when that building went up when I was a kid, and it used to be a voting place until that was shut down. And as far as as serving elderly, I'm currently a legal caregiver for my grandmother. She is on home hospice. One reason why she moved out to this neighborhood, moved us out there, was because of the quiet, the peace and quiet. When she learned of this, and unfortunately she was not able to make any of the meetings because she's bed confined, it was disheartening to her. And the idea of the problems alone with the construction is unsettling, because you're going to have that's a lot to put in. You're going to have a lot of maybe blockage and noise. She's sick. She has to have access to emergency services. I lived on a college campus where they did something like this, and it was a nightmare. In this smaller scale, I know it's going to be a nightmare, and it's going to be disruptive. You really have, no matter how good a vetting process that you have with applications, you really have no idea who it is that's moving in. And they made it quite clear that apparently if it's supposed to be for senior living 55 and up, but there's a possibility one person being 55 and the rest being, it's just like a regular apartment complex. So it's a little bit misleading in that sense. So that there's a lot of parameters here that are just really unsettling and don't really quite make sense. And one of the biggest ones is that if this was a 9-year plan, whatever, that they had going on to do this, they did not do a good job as usual to reach out to the neighborhood to even see, because we all, like I said, we all know each other. If that's even something that we wanted, I understand that that is their property, but it's like you have to take into consideration everyone else too.
So let me just kind of comment this. I definitely appreciate your feedback on that, but in terms of, because that's really related to the community center, but as far as you know, like the person, one person in the unit needing to be 55, as far as you know, does that person need to be a part of the SDA community, or could it be anybody as far as you know? Was that question asked with the community?
With our neighborhood?
Yes. Do you know if it could be anybody, or you
As
thinking
it
it's
was,
limited?
it was presented to us as a senior housing facility that, in our understanding, you have to be 55 and up, not below, not just one person being 55. I mean, I've been around other senior communities. I've even been to senior facilities taking care of my grandmother. There's no leeway for anybody younger than that because that doesn't count as being, to me, as being a strictly senior facility. If you have people living there that's not temporary, like you said earlier, who is not 55 or over. And even still, like I said, I have an issue with the demographic there because 55 is not really considered senior. But I just, none of this is making any kind of sense. And even still, it's going to cause more problems because it's just one more thing I feel is going to be exclusive to them. And it's just leaving us out, pretty much.
Thank you. Do you have any other questions?
Only if you, did you attend the neighborhood meeting that was held?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
Thank you. Anyone else that would like, excuse me?
I need to respond to that question. So this is just for the commissioner, ma'am, you can have a seat. So under the Fair Housing Act, they can't limit it to just Seventh-day Adventist people. This has to be an open process where anybody who meets the age criteria can apply to move into those units.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else that would like to speak in opposition? Yes, ma'am. I just need your name and address, please, before you
My name
start.
is Nina Turner. I live at 3313 Richmond Avenue. Formerly lived at 3325 Richmond Avenue. We moved down the street. Didn't want to leave out the block. We have been there for 31 years. We moved away from North 11th Street, and I found this place. It was just so just so serene and quiet. The seminary that had it, they kept the grounds in front of our house, the block. They kept it just immense. They had a baseball diamond for all the community to use. We would sit out in our driveway and watch the kids play baseball, watch people hit golf balls, watch kids fly kites. Soon as they moved in, all of that went out. Now, my daughter has went over a lot of things, but what my question is what I'm trying to figure out. They have various functions at this so-called community center that nobody is allowed really over there. They really do not want you over there, and they let you know this. I have been over there. They tried to privatize Garfield, and we said, how do you privatize a street? I have been here before when they did that, and we stopped that. You can't privatize Garfield with houses up in there, okay? They snuck this little community center in. We give them the benefit of the doubt. Once it was built, we would go over there, we went and walk, because all we have to do is walk across the park. Not even 100, what, be 200 feet. We went over there to look and see, it's supposed to be for the community. They let us know right off the bat that there was nothing over there for us. And I like, excuse us. So we just turned on around and went out. And the only time we went over there is when that was our polling. Now we have to go clear to Quindale Community Center to vote, when all we had to do was go right over there. Nobody, we don't even know what happened to that. All of a sudden, we can't go over there and vote no more. They got rid of that. And they have a lot of things that they do. They would park, our streets is not that wide. It's really not. You got houses right here, it's in an L shape. Everybody know everybody. They would come, they would park their cars, blocking our driveways, sitting on people's yards from across the street. I had to say, hey, this is private property. You can't be over there, and this lady's not even at home. Why are you on her property? So what they did was, they took the playground, they took the baseball stuff out, and that's where they park. And they have that whole area full of cars when they're having their functions. So I'm wanting to know, where are they going to park at when they have their functions now? If that's what they're going to do. Where is their parking at? They're planning on, they got stakes. All 33rd, down here on Garfield, Richmond, and they done did the plumbing or whatever they did something to the plumbing or something up there. Okay, so that means,
Ma'am, excuse me just a second. You have 1 minute left.
okay, that means that they are planning on building all this stuff. Where are they going to park at when they have their functions? When that is the whole area that they park at now.
We'll get you some answers to that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else that would like to speak? Yes, sir.
My name is Andres Garcia. I live on 3325 Richmond Avenue. And as you guys can see, my fellow neighbors made it pretty clear that all the neighbors around the area are pretty much against the development. I find it personally hard to believe that they will be able to maintain the grounds of the duplexes that they want to build, as they already have a difficult time maintaining the grounds that they currently have there. They didn't mow the grass for about at least a month or 2 months until we put some pressure on them in the neighborhood meeting, which is when then they started to mow the grass and take care of that. So if they can't even do that now, then it's going to be probably hard for them to do that to those buildings there. Another thing is, in the neighborhood meeting that we did have, the majority of the neighbors there, or all the neighbors there, were clearly against it, and they presented it to us as something that they have been in the works for 9 years, and something that was for the community and in the benefit of the community. But I mean, they never once reached out for our opinion or our consideration. We didn't even hear about the development until recently, and as my fellow neighbor stated, the community center, they say it's open for the community, but I have friends that are Seventh-day Adventists that go there, and that I've asked if I could go to one of those events, and they say that no, that as far as they know, you have to be a Seventh-day Adventist to attend. And so that's not really community oriented, if you ask me. And so that's pretty much what I want to say as far as that goes. I just think that we're not necessarily against developing, but we think that if their sole mission is to really develop something for the community, then there's a lot of other things that could be done with that space rather than a senior housing community. Especially since only one of the person that lives in the house has to be 55. Any of the other could be younger, and so that me myself being used to be a teen and everything, I know what the problems that comes with that, and all that, and so obviously it's not going to be a real senior housing facility. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else that would like to speak? Okay, we'd like to get the petitioner back up so we can address some of the neighborhood concerns. Can you start off with maintenance of the grounds? Seems to be some discrepancy on how the property's been currently maintained. Can you address that?
Well, it was discussed at the neighborhood meeting in that regard that the neighbors did bring up the fact that it had gone about 3 weeks without mowing. The folks representing the Seventh-day Adventist Church, I would say they're priests, but I know it's a different terminology for their leaders. But with that, apparently their lawnmower had broken down and they were working on getting it fixed. It had been fixed the week of the Homes Association meeting. Now, at the end of the day, that's for them maintaining their community center. When it comes to these housing units that are planned, and I want to make one statement. I did say 33rd Street, I meant 36th Street, which is the side that the 6 units face out onto, which is on the west side of the property, not the east. I just had my 33rd and 36th backwards on that, and I apologize for that. So everything is west of the community center with the development, if you look at the preliminary plat. So far as the maintenance of these units will not be done by Central States themselves as they do with their current community center. They'll have an outside maintenance company that comes in, mows, just like all group living facilities tend to have. They use outside forces for the mowing. They don't try to do it internal. They don't have their own maintenance man go out and do the mowing typically. You have a mowing company come in, you have a maintenance company come in, and that's part of what will be the program with this. I mean, when you look at, and not that we're getting into rent structures, but maintenance is part of the overall rent structure that goes in with any type of a property of this nature, and that's where the funds for the maintenance will come in, and it won't go directly to Central States doing it themselves.
Okay. Can you address the parking situation with what you've got currently there versus not being able to use those lots for parking for conferences?
Well, to my understanding, the majority of the parking that's done is on the east side overflow coming out. The terrain and the other elements of the topography on that side of the property tend not to yield themselves for very usable parking. There's a fairly steep grade that goes both to the south and to the east from the current building itself, where everything, to the west, where everything to the east of the current building is fairly flat. The conference that they have is one time a year. And yes, if you're not part of the church organization, it's not your conference. This is their conference for their constituents and their parishioners in that regard. Okay, it's open to everybody? Well, okay, then as I've just been informed by one of the leaders of the organization, it's open to everybody. My understanding was the other, but other than that, I know that the overall property itself, the night we were having the neighborhood meeting, was being utilized by an outside organization that had requested it for an event they were hosting. I understand that there has been some confusion on that. Again, I'm not directly part of that, but with that, it was stated, the neighborhood meeting has continued to be stated that that facility is open to the public. Whoever wants to come use it on a scheduled basis is available to use it. But either way, that facility, while it may show conditions or concerns with the overall landowner of the property, is not what the project in front of you tonight is. The project in front of you tonight is 24 housing units on 4.36 acres that is owned by this organization. The current use of the facility, obviously, I can't say obviously, but in general terms, has more than adequate space to the east to facilitate its utilization without the 4.36 acres in question in front of you. As always, with any development, you hear this all the time, change is change, and nobody wants change. We're looking to add to, and as Ms. Richardson indicated, any and everybody under the Fair Housing Act and other regulations by the state of Kansas can apply to live here. Now, there's a question that was brought up by one of the neighbors. We just don't know who's going to live there. I can tell you one thing for a fact. Not only have I worked with this group in the past, but other groups that provide this type of housing. The vetting process for the residents is more intense than the vetting process anyone ever goes through for any type of rental property that you would typically deal with because of the regulations that are outlined by the state of Kansas. Now, again, for land use, that's really not the topic, but I wanted to help explain that with that being a concern brought up, there is very rigid rules the state of Kansas outlines as to who can live here. The number one rule historically, and I think it's still in effect, is the felon rule, right? Right. If you are a convicted felon, you are not allowed to live here, period. Every occupant, not just the one that's listed as the 55 and older, but every occupant has to be approved through the application process to live in these units. The control that exists for ensuring an appropriate and good facility is much more significant than any other type of rental property, or even the person who would buy the home next door to you in many instances of just standard single family. So the fact that we are well under the density issue, we're improving the public infrastructure in the area, we're improving the storm drainage for the area, and ultimately the long-term maintenance will be upgraded from, granted it's a park setting in many instances, but has some concerns that have been voiced. We feel the small change in zoning develops the highest and best use for this western 4.36 acres of this property. And again, I'm standing here to answer any other further questions one may have regarding it, and I hope I've addressed most of the concerns.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Miller?
My question's regarding the maintenance, because, you know, you said it's gonna, we shouldn't be weighing maintenance, and we're gonna come back to maintenance, but from the existing land, but the property owner's not changing. So how can you promise that the maintenance is gonna improve?
Well, it's because that currently the maintenance is being done in-house by the current property owner. This program won't be using the current land ownership and in-house facilities of the property, of the current landowner. It will be maintained by an outside agency governed by the management company that is a joint venture of both the current landowner and an outside agency.
But that's still putting the current landowner in charge. That's kind of why my question's basing on how we can't look at them as equals if the current landowner is still in charge. That's.
I can appreciate your dilemma. I wish I had a more definitive way to promise or guarantee that would be the case. But at the same time, well, I'll let Bill Catton or Dave Osborne answer that if you don't mind.
Mr. Osborne, go ahead and give us your name and address,
Sure.
please.
My name's David Osborne, 3310 Southwest Harrison, Topeka, Kansas. Let me try to answer that and just very briefly tell you, I've been in the construction and development business for 43 years, and we've been doing these type of properties for over 20 some odd years. There's a lot of misinformation that's come out here, but I'm the guarantor on this. So I have a fair amount of control over what happens as far as property management and that type of thing. It just so happens that the Central States Conference owns this land currently, so it's a joint venture with us from that standpoint. But I can guarantee you that all of our properties are maintained to the highest level. And if I could just digress for a minute, I don't know how many hundreds of units we've built, but these are almost all predominantly one occupant. Occasionally two occupants. I can think of one that has a younger occupant that's a handicapped grandson, but there may be some, but I can't think of any right now that are over two. It's very rare. So that's not how these are set up. They're seniors, they're great citizens, they don't leave their house very often. A lot of them don't have cars. They keep their house and their area up, but you know, I have to guarantee this for the next 15 years, so I can assure you that I'm interested in the property. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, thank you. Do you have a question from Mr. Osborne? Yes, Commissioner Jones.
So, Mr. Osborne, you talked about managing other properties. Do you manage other properties in Kansas City, Kansas currently?
Our property manager does. All of our properties are managed by a property manager. This is universal Is this Universal? Is that the name? Yeah, which, we interviewed with the other day, and I think that's, where we'll be going. They manage a large, what?
You have one you can name that they manage in town?
They manage the majority of their stuff on the Missouri side and the Kansas side. But most of their properties are on the Missouri side that they do manage.
Well, he said most of them are on the Kansas and Missouri side. I'm sorry, I'm not interested in what other properties, specifically they manage, but I know they manage hundreds of units. But, if they're not capable of doing it, then we'll find someone else.
Sure, but let me just say this, you may not be interested, but we are because of the opposition to the community, and so their concern is our concern. So that's why we're wanting to know with specificity whether or not you manage any properties, because as the guarantor or the landowner, the property manager is only as good as you all are.
Well, I mean, we can certainly furnish that information, but I don't have it today.
Sir, what are some of the other properties that you do own, and how do you manage them? Because I could.
Who's asking me?
Over here, I can look those up and see, I can look them up on Google Maps and see if they're maintained or not.
You have one in KCK?
I don't. We just finished one in Osage County. We certainly check with the KHRC, but Bill, Bill and I are co-developers. Go ahead, Bill.
My name is Bill Caton, 9340 Southwest Glick Road, Auburn, Kansas. As far as property management, we have investors that will be taking a very close look at property management. State of Kansas, under Kansas Housing Resources Corporation, will be having semi-annual and/or annual inspections, and I dare say that these properties, the management is the most important and the most scrutinized by the guarantors, the investors, state of Kansas.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dwayne Williams. I'm the president and CEO of 12th Street Heritage Development Corporation. Also work with OG Investments, which is Ollie Gates, who owns Gates Barbecue. Ollie Gates is one of the largest landowners in Kansas City, Missouri, of single properties. We manage all of his properties. I run 12th Street Heritage Development Corporation. We are a CDC, a Community Development Corporation. We've just finished, we manage the Painted Ladies, which is at 12th and Michigan, that housing complex there. We also maintain, when they talk about the properties, my company is a Community Development Corporation, so we build housing for the community, but we also develop land, and we also manage land. And we right now, for Kansas City, Missouri, we cut probably some 1,500 lots a month that we manage just with that program. So it was said that the property had not been managed, and that's not absolutely true. They had an issue, and the issue was that they have 40 acres of land, of grass over there. Their tractor went down, their tractor was in the shop, they had an old tractor, and so some of the parts were difficult to get. When I found out about the issue, I got a text from one of their neighborhood association members. When I got a text about the property, I immediately pulled one of my crew and sent them over to that property to make sure that property was cut and maintained. And if I'd have known that it had gone a couple of weeks without being cut, I would have sent the crew over there before then. It's not something that we do, but it's something that I did because the neighbors had a concern about it. The property was not, the yard was grass was probably about this high, which it was, and we cut it. And we would maintain that property over there as long as we're involved in the project. And so one of the couple other things that we wanted to mention with that property, I am a 7-day Adventist, and what I will say is that the property that they spoke about where the cars are parked at, that's a property that we park on when we have special events. And that's our property, and on special events we do park there, but it is solely on that property, and we have those events maybe 3 times a year that we park our cars on that property so they're not on the streets, so we don't interfere with the neighborhood, so we park those cars there. The next thing is about the gymnasium. Our facilities are open. We have a school there on that property that's open to the community. And so kids go to V. Lindsay. We have more students outside of Adventist that are at V. Lindsay than we have Adventist kids that are at that school. So that school is open as well. We have a gymnasium that's open on Sundays. And the community is welcome to use that facility. It can't be open every day of the week simply because of the costs that's associated with air conditioning, lighting, and things like that. But it is open on Sunday mornings to our community. We have health fairs up there. We just had a health fair up there. So we have those things that are open to the community. And I did express, sometimes we may not do as best job as people would like for us to communicate, but we do work with the radio stations to do advertisements and things like that. So that's just a little brief history about what takes place up there, but our grounds are open to the community.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Jones, are you?
Yeah. So, Mr. Williams, let me ask you a question then. Did you go to the neighborhood meeting?
I did,
Okay.
and we met with the Neighborhood Association president. We talked about the project with Donnie Thomas, who is their neighborhood president, and she said that, some of the individuals hadn't been to the neighborhood meetings, but we have talked with Donnie. She's in, their neighborhood association is in favor of the project. I've talked to a number of people on 36th Street where the project is going to be facing that are also okay with the project. They gave me their names, so that's the information, but yes, I was there.
Thank you.
Any other questions that we need to address before we go to staff comments? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public portion of the meeting. We'll get staff comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I understand the neighbors' feeling that this was park-like when the Archdiocese owned it, but it was never a public park. It was always in private ownership, whether it was not-for-profit or not. I would like the neighbor, if they're having basement flooding issues, I'm going to give them my card. I'd like to know a little bit more about that because we might be able to address some of that with the final plat and how the grading occurs. Certainly make sure that it doesn't get worse. And we might be able to even improve that based on how the grading for the project is done. I'm not sure why this isn't a voting location anymore. It was built in 2003-ish, so it would have had to meet ADA standards by then, I believe. I'm not completely certain of that, but I'm pretty sure that by then everything had to comply with the ADA. Because I know a lot of our voting stations went away due to ADA issues. We had to relocate and move a bunch of voting stations around. I'm not sure why that occurred. I don't know that I could get that answer for you tonight. When people are getting ready to do development, I'm sure there are survey stakes out there because to do the preliminary plat, they had to go out and do some preliminary survey work. So, it's completely legal for someone to go out and survey and place survey stakes. In fact, it's against the law to remove those once they're placed by the surveyor unless you have permission. Our experience with Pemberton Place, which is a similarly designed development, has been very positive. In fact, some of those residents are very active in asking for more of the city, but we don't really have complaints about the nature of the tenants or anything like that from that, even from the neighbors that were much like these, unsure about how that was going to work, and the drainage issues that were present at that time and how the drainage was going to occur. I haven't had anybody contact me again based on how that was developed and how that drainage was designed. I think that one has worked out very well. And not that it's funding related, but it was the same kind of structure, same type of approval for the state, and the same type of follow-up from the state that you would see in this type of development. I would note that in the image you have in your staff report of the front of the building, that it is a nice building. It has a brick wainscot, and the primary facade that's not part of the garage is masonry. That's on page 17 of your staff report. And since they've given us that picture, I would make that an additional stipulation that the housing that's built meet that look and feel that they've given us with the nice shuttered windows and the brick wainscot, et cetera. And I also put a stipulation related to the plat that prior to the plat being signed off by myself or the Planning Commission chair, that the existing building obtain a full certificate of occupancy. It's been operating under a temporary certificate of occupancy for many years, and that needs to be finalized. And I would also note that it is against city code to park on the grass. So they need to either figure out a way for their folks to park on the street or develop additional parking there for folks to park on, but it's not legal to park on the grass within the city of Kansas City, Kansas without a special use permit or some other permissions. And given the frequency that the neighbors have described, the Speedway does it for like 6 days a year. I mean, that's kind of the standard that we've followed at this body for a long time. So those two issues need to be resolved before we sign the plat and divide this property apart, because I think it's germane to this as we move forward. I would like for the applicant to provide me by the end of the week their management company and references and sample properties so that I can include that for the Board of Commissioners in the staff report. I think that's very important as we move forward. And I would also just note that as they do this, they will have to put in street lights per the city standards so that the area is well lit, maintained, and easily seen at night, including around their park area. It is difficult when something new comes into a neighborhood, but I would say that if they develop this under R1B and use the narrow lot design guidelines, they could probably triple this density, because you could have a duplex on each corner, you could have a couple single-family houses and row homes in between. You could do that in Richmond, 33rd, Garfield, 35th, and I don't know if it's 35th Terrace or 36th. It's just off the map. So there'd be quite a bit of housing you could put in there. This is actually a lower density proposal than they could do by right under R1B. So I think that is very significant as we look at this and what they could do with just coming in and reestablishing the old lots and developing under that scenario. With the additional stipulations I've mentioned this evening and the other stipulations in the staff report, we'd recommend approval of the master plan, the change of zone, and the preliminary plat. And Mr. Chairman, if you would take the master plan, change of zone, and preliminary plat.
Okay, any questions for staff?
I have a question.
Commissioner Serta.
Rob, I was going to ask this as more specific questions, but you basically covered the ground that I wanted to address. And I do still want to add the caveat to this, that this relates to the adjacent property, not the subject property. I understand it's all one parcel right now, but it's being subdivided. But just to clarify and reiterate what you said, so what you're saying is that prior to formal approval, recordation, all of that, of the preliminary plat, that the issues with parking would have to be addressed in the adjacent community center site, so to speak, and that the temporary certificate of occupancy needs to be finalized into a permanent.
That would be before the final plat was
Before
recorded.
the final plat?
Right.
Okay. Clarify that both of those things have to happen before
Correct.
the final plat. Okay. And so again, the intent with that is to address the parking issue with parking on unimproved surfaces or concern about spillover parking impact onto the neighborhood.
Correct.
Okay. But again, it's still not specific to the housing development.
But it's part of the property being divided.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Just want to be clear on that.
Other questions for staff? Commissioner Jones?
Yes. So, Rob, in the staff report where it says key issues, development and design, is that just in there because of, we got in proximity, single-family housing largely versus duplex-type housing? I'm just wanting to know exactly get clarification on that.
More on what the housing, the appearance of the housing, as I mentioned, the masonry and the look of the housing itself. There are some issues related to how the grading happens that are, and the roads are designed that are important, but those are addressed with the Public Works comments.
Okay. And then my other question is with how this particular development is set up, because when we listen to the residents, one of their big concerns is that you have just one person out of the 4 possible in the unit that's 55 and others are under, and that sounds like they think that that's going to be a fairly big issue. Is there anything that can be stipulated with regard to that, with how this is set up?
Quite frankly, we really can't talk about the age of the residents at all. I mean,
And that goes to what Patrick was saying.
correct. I mean, they can tell us that. That's something for information. But if it wasn't age restricted at all, I don't know that the age of the person's living there is not something that I believe you can consider. And I'd let Patrick correct me if I'm wrong on that. Yeah, so.
Other questions for staff? Seeing none, I'll stand for a motion.
I just want to say we concur with the stipulations, the additional ones.
Thank you.
Motion to approve Master Plan Amendment 2915-5 with the additional stipulations.
Okay, motion to approve the master plan 2019-5 with the additional stipulations from staff. Any discussion? I'm sorry, moved by Serta, seconded by Commissioner Reasons. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Ernst,
Aye.
Huey,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Miller,
No.
Pauly,
Aye.
Reasons,
Aye.
Serta.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to recommend approval of the master plan amendment passes 6 in favor and 1 opposed.
Thank you. Now we'll stand for a motion on the change of zone.
Motion to approve the change of zone, subject to the additional staff stipulations.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Serta for approval, seconded by Commissioner Huey. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Ernst,
Aye.
Huey,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Pauly,
Aye.
Reasons,
Aye.
Serta.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to recommend approval of the change of zone application, subject to the staff's revised comments, passes 7 in favor and none opposed.
Thank you. And now I need one for the plat. Is that correct?
Yes, that's
Yes.
correct.
Motion to approve the preliminary plats, subject to the additional staff stipulations.
Second.
Motion to approve the preliminary plat made by Commissioner Serta, seconded by Commissioner Reasons. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Ernst,
Aye.
Huey,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Miller,
No.
Pauly,
Aye.
Reasons,
Aye.
Serta.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to approve the preliminary plat, subject to the staff's revised comments, passes 6 in favor and none opposed.
Thank you. This will be heard again on August 29th.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time this evening.
And before we start the next case, we're going to take a 3 to 5 minute break. I apologize to everybody, but we need about a 3 to 5 minute break up here. So we'll reconvene in a few minutes. Anybody's got to do something. Now's the time. Where's it going, JoJo? What's disgusting? It's weird. Do what? Oh, that's true, yeah. I passed a Benedict plate on the highway. That might have been on the way here. You didn't get a new car, did you? Oh, okay. Why, then all of a sudden, maybe it was on the way here, maybe it was.
It was like 82, yeah, it was just that right where. I wonder where Gene's for the work. Yeah, yeah, you have to. Is there stone? Look at it. A couple of those I actually wore shorts outside. All that outside. It's always odd when you have a collared shirt, wearing shorts, it looks like you're out playing tennis or something.
Are you doing a church over in Argentine? Is that
Oh,
in
am I
Orlando?
working on that church?
Yeah, I think my husband might have met you.
Who's that?
Delaney Moore.
Yeah, that's your. Oh my gosh. I was just telling somebody, I was just telling Nathan that Saturday I had to go to a neighborhood meeting. One of the points of the neighborhood meeting, I said, Kansas City to me is like a big small town, not a small big town, because you find these weird intersections of like people that you have no idea had anything to do with each other.
Yeah.
So the issue I've got right now is for the work specifically your headphones, make sure you have a shirt because it's also they want an engineer. So I could pull the engineer back.
You're always welcome to speak on whatever you want.
And it's so I'm having to like do the budget, and so there's like and the roof is not functioning. So you gotta work with it. So he's like and so I'm waiting to get back to
It sounds like a cool project.
So I don't know if he told you, but the way that I met him, so there's this guy named Adam.
Oh, yeah.
You know Adam?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, you know Adam. All right, so my line about Adam is like, if you want Adam, you need this. The else way of having to do is just close your eyes, try to pay attention. Because honestly, that's how you just the craziest one was one day I was in a meeting over at the IM Architects. They used to be, they moved to Crown Center, but they used to be over on.
Yeah, they did.
And you know, we mentioned and I left the meeting there, and I was like, oh, you need to go get those keys cocked out. So let me run across the street. I just pulled her on the phone, so I couldn't go back there. Get a phone call from the members of the organization. And almost the end of the time, I was going to say, I texted them or whatever. Let me get a hold of you. I've got to get this. And as I'm hanging out, I'm not sure what Adam was sitting. You're fine. You're fine. He's like sitting on the curb on the phone. Yeah. In front of my car. Of course he was. And I got on and he's like, he just waves at me. Like it's nothing. He just magically.
We're going to do that now, Janet.
Who's this? Adam Jones.
Adam D. Adam Jones.
So what did Adam do? Have you ever been to the show? No. I still haven't been. Yeah. But
Okay. Who will take over?
One of them guys.
Okay, one of those guys.
Do you want to just stay up here?
I'm going to stay up here, and you're going to.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry.
It could be.
Okay, we'll reconvene the meeting. And Director Richardson, if you'd go ahead and call us the next case, please.
Wish me luck.
As long as your phone's off, that's step one.
I appreciate the courtesy call you gave me just to make sure it was off.
Uh-huh. I did.
Special use permit application 2019-84, Abdul Mazid. It's a renewal of a special use permit 2017-28. The applicant, Abdul Mazid, has applied for a renewal of a special use permit to operate a used car dealership at 1010 Merriam Lane. This property was operated as an antique car salesman from 1987 to 2001. Since that time, it's been operated as a variety of businesses, including an automotive repair business from 2004 to 2005. I think I'm reading too much here. So they're wanting to renew the permit, and the following items will be included as part of the record for this case. The city's currently adopted zoning and subdivision regulations, the official zoning map for the area in question, the city's currently adopted master plan for the area in question, the staff report and attachments dated August 12, 2019, the application, other documents, plans, pictures, and maps submitted by the applicant in furtherance of the case and contained in the official file, the notice in the Wyandotte County Echo dated July 18th, 2019, and the notices to property owners dated July 11th, 2019. Does anyone on the commission have any context to disclose on this application?
Yes.
Yes. Was contacted by Aaron Stroika, Rosedale Development in regarding opposition.
And Commissioner Serta?
Same, and the only detail I would add is that Rosedale Development has requested that if this is approved, that they would like to see all of the required site improvements, including the sidewalk to the neighborhood, made.
All those for and against, please come to the front of the room.
Okay. Good evening. Go ahead and give us your name and address. Tell us about the project.
Good evening. Yes, my name's Austin Parker. 3146 Southwest Traffic Way, Kansas City, Missouri. I am here as the attorney speaking on behalf of the applicant, Abdul Mazid, and A Plus Auto Sales. First of all, thank you so much for the additional context, because you've made my job easier by giving a little bit of background information. Thank you so much. By way of background, I appreciate the opportunity to speak before the commission. Looking through staff's report, I don't want to digress too deeply into many of the issues as I believe we're all fairly in agreement with the exception of the installation of the sidewalk, that almost all requested site improvements have been made. My clients bought the building a couple of years back, attempting to put it to a profitable use. If you look through the history of the property's use over the past 15, 20 years, there's, with the exception of a time where it was devoted to a marketplace, there's little to no profitable use of the property outside of auto sales. If you're familiar with the corner of where we're talking about on Merriam Lane, there's 4 automobile dealerships within a 250-foot radius of this. Right now, I think it's noted in staff report that my clients listed the building for sale. I think if someone were to come, even with maybe not such a great offer at this point to buy the property, I think there'd be a sale that would happen very quickly. Right now, my client's within the building. He's making use of it in the only way that he can economically understand to make some use of the property. If you look at, if this is not necessarily a discussion of financials, but there's not been a great deal of profit at all made over the past year or so. Once the property made its way through the permitting process into development, it's been devoted for about the last 15 months towards the use, which is currently on site. There's approximately 6 or 7 cars displayed, and then the rest of there's 2 or 3 cars that are within the facility. A little bit of context on the sidewalk installation. I had a meeting with my client, looked on site. Client contacted a contractor in the area to get a quote on the installation of the concrete sidewalk. Again, I can tell you in terms of the amount of economics, profit devoted that could be devoted to this from the business. I think the business barely broke even over the past 15 months. Now, granted, it's not a that's not necessarily directly relevant, but it's just a point of information. But all that being said, my client still did contact after making significant site improvements in terms of landscaping that you'll notice if you drive by the site, there's landscaping on the front and the side of the building that's not present within the other dealerships. And also to give a little bit of context, I think if you look at the site and you compare, nothing against the car lot right next door, but if you look at the two car lots as they set side by side, there's a difference in the level of landscaping and aesthetic appearance. But turning more to the point in question, the sidewalk. If you look at where the sidewalk is being proposed to be located, it's within an easement right-of-way that's about 5 to 6 feet wide at some points. Could be a little bit more, some places could be a little bit less. If you look at the roadway improvement, when we had the contractor come out and do an evaluation, and I believe I have 3 photos that I included that might be a little bit more informative. They're in a PDF, and I apologize for their quality as I'm not a very good photographer. That's not it. We might want to get rid of that. That's my letter of, well, don't worry about that. You can just close it out. Don't worry about it. I have my flash drive here.
Are they in the staff report?
There are not. There were additional photos. I did see some in the staff report, some photos, but they weren't detailing the condition of the roadway. Sorry about that. I apologize for the delay. You see the 3 photos that say IMG? All 3 of those photos. Perfect. Thank you. I'm sorry about that. Okay. Perfect. All right. So you'll see right there, the first photo details the stormwater inlet that is designed to receive drainage down that side street there as it runs into Merriam Lane. Okay. If staff could go to the next photo. Okay, you'll see part of the settling, the cracking that's occurring along the asphalt. The contractor, when we brought him out to find out whether or not we could actually install a sidewalk, explained that with the cracking that's there and the settling that's there, without an improvement, and if you could go to the next photo, the third one will also show better. It'll show it more clearly. As you can see towards the bottom of the street, that's where the stormwater sewer ingrate is. Without an improvement to that area there in terms of curb and guttering, any type of sidewalk that we would install as of today's date would just wash out. What happened was we've experienced over the last 2 years significant drainage. Anytime we cap a street with a asphalt type covering that's impervious, there's an additional stormwater runoff that occurs. That side there's a significant drop to the right as you're looking at that photo. There's about a 4 or 5 foot drop in terms of where that's at versus the bottom of the building. The building has absorbed a significant amount of stormwater runoff. There's been flooding within the building that we've had to remediate. We believe, in talking to our contractor, a lot of that will be remediated once, I assume, the city's capital improvement plan, which I'm sure this is not the highest of high priorities on that capital improvement plan, but once that capital improvement plan does bring in the stormwater curb and guttering that would tie into that stormwater drainage system, believe that would be remediated and we could go on ahead and install a sidewalk. As a preliminary measure, we did add some dirt on the right-hand side there to see whether we could do something to address some of the settling there, and that dirt all melted down and I guess away. So we don't have the ability, without that improvement, the curb and guttering being put into place, we don't have the ability to install a sidewalk. However, I've talked with the property owner, and should we not be able to sell, which, like I said, if anybody's willing to buy, I think we're willing to sell. Should we not be able to sell, we are willing to install the sidewalk as the final condition once that street curb and guttering goes in, so that would allow us to do it without it washing out. Other than that, I don't believe we have anything further to add at this time, although I would be more than happy to entertain any questions that you might have.
Questions for the petitioner? Commissioner Serta?
Sir, Does the owner currently operate other businesses other than used car sales?
I'm not certain that he does, Dr. Serta. I'm talking with my client. I think this is their primary business.
Okay.
If you were to go onto site, Doctor, you would notice that it's a very family-oriented operation. When I was there today, I think his wife and his daughter were there, and his brother. Other than those 4 people, those are the only people that I'm familiar with operating within the business.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll open up the public portion of the meeting. Anyone in the audience wants to speak in favor of or in opposition to this request? Seeing none, we'll move to staff comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All these site conditions were relevant when this was approved last time, and quite frankly, I don't recall those coming up. It does seem to me that if the building is suffering water damage, that installing the curb and gutter and sidewalk would actually help preserve the building and increase the value of the building. We have sidewalks that, in conditions similar to this in other parts of the city. The 4-foot wide sidewalk made of concrete is not something that just washes away. So I'm not sure that I think this is subject to being washed out as described by the applicant's attorney. I'd recommend approval subject to installation of the sidewalk within the next 6 months, or the special use permit would be terminated for failure to comply with stipulations. No hearing required.
Any questions for staff?
I have one.
Commissioner Reasons?
Robin, as I was looking at this, where's that sidewalk supposed to go to? Because if you kind of Google up, there's going to be a point when it stops because there's just not much room to put a sidewalk beside the retaining wall that's on the back there where the road meets. So how far up are they supposed to go, and what's it supposed to go to?
It goes to their property line, and as other things develop, that'll be a similar, or change uses, that'll be a similar requirement for those.
Further questions? Seeing none, we'll stand for a motion.
I just wanted to comment, we wouldn't have any objection to staff qualification with the slight revision that instead of it being within 6 months, that it be upon either a petition from the neighboring property owners to bring the street up to current sewer and gutter grade, or without that petition, that sometime within the next 2 years, if that.
I need to kind of interrupt you. We've already
Okay.
heard from you.
Oh, okay,
got
appreciate
staff
that.
comments, so
I'm sorry, I was just.
I'm waiting for a motion, so unless you're going to make one, which you can't.
Absolutely. I apologize.
All right, thank you. A motion or any other questions for staff?
I guess I got a question.
Commissioner
On that
Miller.
follow-up that we're not really supposed to listen to, should we hold this over for 30 days?
Basically, the applicant's attorney is trying to put stipulations on there that means that they wouldn't have to, he doesn't think they would have to do it in the next 2 years. So if you don't want it done in the next 2 years, just say, we don't care if the sidewalk gets done in the next 2 years. If you care about the sidewalk, then we need a motion that says that the sidewalk needs to be installed sooner than later, because this is what we went through the last time and we still don't have a sidewalk.
So it was approved last year for 2 years without the installation of the sidewalk, correct?
But the stipulation was that if it was renewed, the sidewalk would be required, and they're requesting renewal with that understanding.
Okay, thank you.
I do have one follow-up question to staff then, but this is a new property owner, right? I think when I was looking, it said he bought it in 2018, and that would have been a 2-year in 2017.
Correct, but this was, it was the long-term auto uses had been abandoned, and so they had to get a special use permit for what they wanted to do here, and that's a requirement of a special use permit, and whether it was the old owner doing a new use or a new owner, either way, it would have been the same requirements.
Questions or a motion?
Question for staff, just to clarify. This is the gentleman who came, the same gentleman who came and said, yes, I will put a sidewalk in if you give me the 2 years from now?
Correct.
Thank
And
you.
I don't know that he said that. That was the stipulation put upon them by the Board of Commissioners.
Actually, I was here, and I'm pretty sure that's what he said.
I need a motion.
I move that the Kansas City, Kansas Planning Commission recommend denial of petition SP 2019-84 to the Unified Government Board of Commissioners. It is not in compliance with the city ordinances, and as it will not promote the public health, safety, and welfare of the city of Kansas City, Kansas. It is not in compliance with the corridor master plan for the area, and the prior stipulations on the previous SUP have not been satisfied.
I will second that motion, Dr. Serta.
Motion is for denial, as stated by the maker, and is second by Commissioner Serta, and seconded by Commissioner Ernst. Discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Sorry,
Aye.
Ernst,
Aye.
Huey,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Pauly,
No.
Reasons,
Aye.
Serta.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion passes 6 in favor and 1 opposed.
Okay, this will be heard again on August 29th.
Mr. Chairman, that brings us to our next case, SP 2019-88, Jennifer Priest with Showalter Law Firm. This is a special use permit for a short-term rental Airbnb at 433 Ann Avenue. The applicant is representing the property owners at 433 Ann. They wish to operate the short-term Airbnb on the property with a maximum of 4 guests, and the owner does not live at the property. The following items were included as part of the record for this case. The city's currently adopted zoning and subdivision regulations, the official zoning map for the area in question, the city's currently adopted master plan for the area in question, the staff report and attachments dated August 12, 2019, the application and other documents, plans, pictures, maps, and submitted by the applicant in furtherance of the case and contained in the official file, the notice in the Wyandotte Echo dated July 18, 2019, and the notices to the property owners dated July 11, 2019. Do any members of the commission have any context to disclose on this application?
No.
All those for and against, please come to the front of the room.
Good evening. Go ahead and give your name and address and tell us about your project.
Hi, my name is Magda Born, and I was hired by Mr. Showalter to act as a property manager for his proposed Airbnb on 5th Street and Ann Street. And as I read in your agenda, there was a confusion or questioning who the real property manager will be, because there were some abrupt change of names, and I would like to clarify it. Originally, Wes McCain was supposed to be as a property manager. However, he shortly realized that he's a city employee and he also sits on housing committees, and he felt it would be conflict of interest, so he backed out of this project. And further, Ms. Justine Underwood Jones was interested in helping being a property manager, but as of very recently, she's moving out of Strawberry Hill and she is pursuing other projects, so she will not have time to help out with this project. And I have the time commitment and the availability to help out. I'm 5 minutes away from both of the properties, so I will be the de facto property manager. And further, the concerns, as I was the one who took the minutes, who picked up the signs, and who made all the appropriate filings. However, I was not familiar with the minutes, so the way I wrote it, I just wrote all the concerns of the citizens, but I didn't list all of them were actually answered to their satisfaction at the time of the ending of the meeting. For example, the parking, we emphasized how if it were owned property, there would be family living there who would have multiple cars, 2, maybe 3. So as being at Airbnb, people travel together in one vehicle, so there would be only one car parked in front of vehicle. And mostly, I would like to emphasize that Mr. Showalter is asking for only 1 year Airbnb permit, and at that time he's interested in selling both properties. He has extensive resources invested in these properties. For example, the house on 5th Street, he invested over $50,000. There was no kitchen, no air conditioning, and he put in a new roof. And the second house, until last year, was occupied by his recently deceased brother. And he believes it would be for the benefit of the community and of his appreciation of his property and return of his investments, to have the short-term permission to run it as an Airbnb, because he's hoping within 1 year, with the increasing values of real estate in Strawberry Hill, with upcoming grocery store and KU facility, his property would further appreciate, and he will be able to get a return on his investment on improving these properties. So again, I would like to emphasize the fact that it would be permit for 1 year only. Thank you.
Could you just give me a little bit of a clarification? Who owns the property?
Mr. Showalter,
Okay, and who is Jennifer Priest?
she's his secretary. He's a law firm, and she's kind of his legal secretary.
Okay, thank you for that. Questions for the petitioner's representative? So the request is for a 1-year
Correct.
Airbnb?
Correct.
Okay. Commissioner Miller?
Are we on the Ann property?
This is for 433 Ann.
Yeah.
Okay.
What improvements have been made to the property on Ann?
So there was a $50,000 investment on new roof, and there was no kitchen in the property and no AC.
Okay.
Fifth Street or on Ann though?
On Fifth Street, yes.
Okay, what
It
about
was
on?
on N, sorry. It was on N, sorry.
Other questions? Okay, we'll go open up the public portion of the meeting, and we'll get comments from the neighbors. Anyone in the audience want to speak in favor of or in opposition to? We'll start with in favor. Okay, anyone want to speak in favor? Okay, thank you. Name and address.
Hello, I'm Justine Underwood-Jones, 431 Ann Avenue. I am the president of the Strawberry Hill Neighborhood Association, but the Strawberry Hill Neighborhood Association is remaining neutral on this, so I'm here as the next-door neighbor and also as a friend to Magda. And I did take care of David's brother before his passing when he was living in the Fifth Street property with cancer. So I'm familiar with the Showalter family and also with these two specific properties in question. I did want to clarify, I was at the public meeting that Magda held, and there were neighbors that showed up that had some concerns. A lot of their concerns were, how do we make sure that this is only an Airbnb for 1 year? And they weren't sure about, do we receive notices again when this expires? Is there a way that we can ask the city for Strawberry Hill to have like a cap on how many Airbnbs? And I let them know about the central area master plan that we're doing, and that's absolutely something I think staff would be interested in discussing with the neighborhood group. But just kind of walking them through those, basically they were general questions on how do we make sure that these are controlled, that the area doesn't become all Airbnbs, which is a very legitimate concern. And when I answered those questions for them as a neighborhood association president who like knows how the gist of how planning works, most of them were very satisfied with that. They just wanted to make sure that this wasn't approved. And then it went on as an Airbnb indefinitely. Because the general feeling that I've gotten from folks on my street and folks on Fifth Street is that, well, they're comfortable with a temporary Airbnb, but if it's going to operate that way indefinitely, they'd prefer to have somebody living in the property full time, which as the person next to the Ann house, I can confirm that I would prefer to have a full-time neighbor. But given the amount of money that David put into a house that he bought for 20 grand, and the house is like something like 700 square feet, putting in a new roof, upgrading it to 200 amp electrical, putting in new HVAC, all of this other stuff, the house had like OSB for siding on one side of it. And he went in with like the mock asbestos to match the rest of the house. The whole house has been painted. It has granite countertops, and he intends to sell it to an owner occupant, but he doesn't want it to sit vacant for like the next 8 months. So I feel like this makes sure that the property is being looked after, it's being cleaned, and we have more eyes on our streets when there's traffic coming in and out of the properties. So for a temporary Airbnb, like I feel like it's a reasonable request. My personal preference would not would be for it not to extend beyond 1 year. If the applicant comes back and wants to renew it, I would have serious questions as to why the property wasn't sold if the community was told that this was a temporary thing. So, but that was basically what I wanted to clarify. And then that Magda, I want to apologize on behalf of Wes McCain. I understand that he began the application process for the applicant, and then when he backed out, I put David in touch with Magda because she used to run an Airbnb in Prairie Village before Prairie Village banned Airbnbs outright. So I knew that she had the experience. I've seen her home. It's very clean. Magda's a good people person. She works at the library, and I believe that she would do an excellent job managing this for David. So
Okay.
just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, thank you. Anyone else who wants to speak in favor? Okay, and in opposition? Give us your name and address, please.
My name is Erica Kim, and I'm living at Armstrong Avenue, 431. It's Kansas City, Kansas 66101. Me and my husband, we moved to this house in 2015, and this area does not really have any rental properties. It was very nice, quiet area, and 2 years later, in 2017, my mom was coming to Kansas City, Kansas. So we purchased second property for her at 1017 Ann Avenue. And we did not pay attention at the time that there had been 2 houses, rental houses, that been converted into the apartment living. One is right next to us, it's 1023 Ann Avenue, and another one is across the road. So, well, we didn't have bad experience, we didn't pay attention to this. The house was all right, so we purchased this house for my mother. 2 months later, since my mother moved into this house, the first thing happened, the man from 1023 came to our porch, smashed our lights, destroyed my statues, and then ran away. And, I didn't have any cameras or anything like this, so we didn't have him on the record.
I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt you. Are you talking about your experiences on the 10th Street
1017.
property to transfer? Okay, I just want to see where you're going.
Yeah, to 1017.
Okay.
431 is very quiet, nice. It is close to this 433 Ann Avenue, but I'm just saying that how it is living next to the rental apartments.
I'm with you. Thank you.
So he came back, he pushed my stone over and over again. So I didn't have cameras, we didn't have on the record, police came over, nobody was caught. Okay, fine. The owner of the house said, I'm gonna evict him and the problem would be solved. We say, all right. He did not reimburse us for damages, he did not do anything. So, but we thought this is first experience and everything would be all right. And after that, my mom started smell, really bad smell at the back of my house. And then the bad smell appeared in front of the house. So my neighbors across the road told me those people from that 1023 pretty much was coming out at night and urinate in our property, in our bushes, in front of our house, and then at the back of our house. Same thing been happening. So they abandon cars, like full of trash, They come, the car with the punctured flat tires, trash inside, trash at the back, because sometimes it's a truck, and just leave it like this. We call police say, well, it's a street parking, you cannot do anything. And the last thing, it happened just Saturday, this is the ticket. There was another car with the expired license plate, so I called the police and recorded that. So, but those kind of incidents, we still been living with that, they drove like, the carts from the store.
Mhm.
Sometimes they drop this in my yard and I call police, asking to remove that. And then drunk people coming in and out and parties at night and things like this over and over.
But these aren't happening on your property over on Strawberry Hill, correct? They're happening on the 10th Street property.
Yes.
And your concern is that if you
And my
allow the
concern
Airbnb,
that would be the same living next to the rental properties. This is not over. My mother was like in April sitting in the yard planting the flowers. So that means
I'm going to interrupt you because unfortunately your 10th Street property really isn't relevant to what we're talking about here tonight. So I need you to tie the two together.
we are scared.
Okay, you're
We
afraid to have
afraid.
rental. next to
Yes.
your other property, based on the experience that you had
Yes.
on your first property?
Yes,
Okay.
because on this property, this is not enough. There've been shootings twice. The man opened the window, shot my car from the BB gun, daytime. And I have ticket over here. I have ticket for this. And then I left to work, he shot the car of my neighbors. We're just scared. When we will be living again next to the rental properties, that kind of thing is gonna happen over and over again next to our second house. We're scared. Understand me, during the day when somebody opens the window and starts shooting, and if I have children in the yard, do they care really about my safety, my mother's safety, children's safety? No, they don't. And police came over and they say, do you have him on the record? He had 4 or 5 people in that house. We couldn't really see which one. You have to see them closer. And my
Right.
mom has vision problems. We're just afraid.
I understand. Are there any questions for this lady? Thank you for your testimony. We appreciate
You're
it.
welcome.
Anyone else want to speak in opposition to this request? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public portion of the meeting and we'll get staff comment.
So given that this is somebody who doesn't live there, the maximum recommendation that we've done on these to be consistent would be for 1 year. I think that the issue with the property manager has been clarified, and she lives close and has Airbnb experience. I understand the neighbor's concern about living next to rental houses, but, quite frankly, we have folks that own their homes in the city that behave that way as well. I'm not sure that that's a universal action of rental folks, and with the Airbnb, they'll have to be in there on a regular basis to maintain the property, and it won't be the same people over and over. And I think we have to treat this as if, it's just a 1 year. If they don't sell it and they come back, then we have their statements, or at least the statement of their representative that they were going to sell it and they don't want more than a year or so. And that they would sell it, presumably to somebody who'd want to own the property. It sounds like it's a very nice property. One question, Mr. Chairman, you might ask is if somebody offered to buy the house tomorrow, would they sell it? Or is this just, they want to rent it for a few months as Airbnb and then sell it? That would be the only clarification that I would want on that. But outside of that, I think I'd recommend approval for 1 year, subject to the other stipulations in the staff report.
Are there questions for staff? Commissioner Miller?
Rob, if they did sell it tomorrow, doesn't the special use permit move into the new owner's hands?
No, it's to the specific owner, so it doesn't, special use permits don't transfer with new owners, so they would have to come in and apply for another special use permit if they wanted to do that. So if he sold it tomorrow, then we theoretically wouldn't even go to Board of Commissioners, but, that's the, I don't know, did I answer your question? I'm sorry. Okay.
Okay, Commissioner Serta?
Rob, this case just makes me realize, I know we discussed this in some early cases, and I don't think we've developed a standard for the length of stay. I know that's been a concern with some other ones, and I don't see anything in the staff report to that effect.
So the length of stay has to be less than 29 days, otherwise they would have to have a rental license.
Okay.
So it's from 1 to 29 days. It's 29, correct?
Okay.
Other questions for staff? The only comment I would make, Rob, and with the staff sitting there, could we please get with the lady who spoke about her 10th Street property to get the address to make sure we've got proper rental license and everything for that property, since it does seem to be such a problem. So if we could do that. Okay, any other questions for staff? Seeing none, I'll stand for a motion.
Motion to approve.
For 1 year, correct?
Yep, for 1 year.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Pauly, seconded by Commissioner Jones. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Ernst,
Aye.
Huey,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Miller,
No.
Pauly,
Yes.
Reasons.
No.
Mr. Chairman, Serta.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion passes 5 in favor and 2 opposed.
Thank you. This will be heard again on August 29th. Oh, are they here to speak upon the next one?
Yes. She needs to stay for that. Yeah.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not used to all the scrolling I have to do here. Mr. Chairman, that brings us to our next case, Special Use Permit 2019-89, Jennifer Priest with Showalter Law Firm. This is a special use permit for a short-term rental at 709 North Fifth Street. This is a similar request to the last one. They want to operate a short-term Airbnb at the property with a maximum of 4 guests. The following items are included as part of the record for this case. The city's currently adopted zoning and subdivision regulations, the official zoning map for the area in question, the city's currently adopted master plan for the area in question, the staff report and attachments dated August 12, 2019, the application and other documents, plans, pictures, and maps submitted by the applicant in furtherance of the case and contained in the official file, the notice in the Wyandotte Echo dated July 18th, 2019, and the notices to the property owners dated July 11th, 2019. Have any of the members of the commission have any contacts to disclose with this case?
No.
All those for and against, please come to the front of the room.
So I just have to retell the same story I said before.
Or you can give us a condensed version, whichever you like.
We are asking for 1-year permit, and I will be the person taking care of it. And after 1 year, it will be sold after the property hopefully appreciates in value and the invested money are recouped.
Okay. I do have one short question, and based on the director's comment from the previous case, if someone wanted to buy the house now, is the owner willing to sell it, or does he want the 1 year to try to recoup some of that investment?
I really cannot answer for the owner, but I think if it were a fair offer, because the Airbnb being in a Strawberry Hill, I think from the past experiences, the rental was usually on weekends. So I think it would be much sounder financial decision to sell the house if the offer was fair.
Everything's for sale. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Questions for the petitioner?
Mr. Chairman, I have one. Ma'am, is it fair to include your testimony from the previous case related to how this would operate in this case?
Yes, please do.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make that part of this record as well.
We'll incorporate the testimony from the previous case, correct? Okay, thank you. Any questions for the petitioner? Okay, we'll open up the public portion of the meeting. Anyone want to speak in favor?
Hi, I'm Justine Underwood-Jones, and I am in favor. Is this the Fifth Street house or the Ann house? I got the numbers confused on that.
This is the Fifth Street house.
Okay, great. I did want to say on David kind of holding off a little bit, the Ann house, he's planning to have the front yard terraced because he thinks it's going to be a lot easier to sell because it's a really steep hill. So it does give him a little bit of time to get that made into terraces that are landscaped, because it sucks weed eating that. And everybody is going to know that when they look at the house. So there's a little bit of buying time just to make them easier to move. But if someone didn't care and was willing to just, pay for it without the terraced yard, then I think that would be something he would entertain.
Okay, so you're in favor?
Yes.
Oh, and a side note, weed eating sucks regardless of where the house is located.
That's fair.
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak in favor of or in opposition to this request? Seeing none, we'll close the public portion of the meeting. We'll get staff comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'd recommend approval for 1 year, subject to the revised information we received this evening and the stipulations in the staff report.
Thank you. Questions for staff? Stand for a motion.
Motion to approve, subject to the staff stipulations.
Second.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Serta, seconded by Commissioner Huey. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Ernst?
Aye.
Huey?
Aye.
Jones?
Aye.
Miller?
No.
Neal? Oh, sorry, he's absent. Polly?
Aye.
Reasons?
Aye.
Serta?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to approve passes 6 in favor and 1 opposed.
Thank you. This will be heard again on August 29th.
Mr. Chairman, that brings us to our next case, Special Use Permit 2019-90, Christy Eaton and Kim Maples with Little Leaders of KCK, Inc. This is a special use permit for a child daycare on the Kansas City, Kansas Community College campus where the previous daycare had been. The following items are included as part of the record in this case. The city's currently adopted zoning and subdivision regulations, the official zoning map for the area in question, the city's currently adopted master plan for the area in question, the staff report and attachments dated August 12, 2019, the application of their documents, plans, pictures, and maps submitted by the applicant in furtherance of the case and contained in the official file, the notice of the Wyandotte County Echo, or the Wyandotte Echo dated July 18, 2019, and the notices to property owners dated July 11, 2019. Do any members of the commission have any context to disclose related to this application?
No.
All those for and against, please come to the front of the room.
Good evening. Go ahead and give us your name and address and tell us about your project.
We are Christy Eaton and Kim Maples of Little Leaders of KCK. I'm Christy Eaton of 11678 South Lewis Drive, Olathe. We're requesting a special use permit to open a child care center in the building that was formerly used as a child care center on the Kansas City, Kansas Community College campus. It was operated by the college for 34 years from 1983 to 2017, and it has been vacant for approximately 2 years.
Hello, I'm Kim Maples. My address is 2039 North 1000th Road in Eudora, Kansas. Christy and I currently own a child care center in Olathe. We've operated that child care center for 12 years now. And in just the spring of this year, Kansas City, Kansas Community College put out a request for proposals to select a new provider to own and operate the child care center in the existing child care building. We submitted a proposal and were selected. And we are requesting this special use permit to open Little Leaders of KCK to provide child care and early childhood education for children 12 months to 6 years. In doing so, we'll be helping to meet a need for more high-quality child care for the children of Wyandotte County. We appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you. Questions for the petitioners? Okay, seeing none, we'll open up the public portion of the meeting. Is there anyone in the audience who wants to speak in favor of or in opposition to the request? Seeing none, we'll close the public portion of the meeting. We'll get staff comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We would recommend approval subject to the stipulations in the staff report.
Any questions for staff? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve, subject to the stipulations in the staff report.
Second.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Miller, seconded by Commissioner Jones. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Ernst,
Aye.
Huey,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Pauly,
Aye.
Reasons,
Aye.
Serta.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to approve passes 7 in favor and none opposed.
This will be heard again on August 29th in this room, and good luck.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, our next case is Special Use Permit 2019-91, Laura Sanchez with Homestead Monastery Farm. This applicant wishes to operate a Montessori home or Montessori school out of her home for a maximum of 12 students, ages 6 to 15 at 3800 Weaver Court. The following items were included as part of the record for this case. Are included as part of the record of this case. The city's currently adopted zoning and subdivision regulations, the official zoning map for the area in question, the city's currently adopted master plan for the area in question, the staff report and attachments dated August 12, 2019, the application of their documents, plans, pictures, and maps submitted by the applicant in furtherance of the case and containing the official file, the notice in the Wyandotte County Echo dated July 18, 2019, and the notices to property owners dated July 11, 2019. Do any commissioners have any disclosures to make related to this application?
No.
All those for and against, please come to the front of the room.
Good evening.
Hi, good evening. I sing in front of about several thousand people, and this is a little different than singing and playing. I do have some more submissions.
Can you start off with your name and
Oh,
address?
sorry, Laurie Sanchez at 3800 Weaver Court.
Okay, great. Tell us about your project.
I would like to start a Montessori elementary school in my home. I've worked in a Montessori environment since 2007. My children like to tell everybody that they've had every form of schooling possible between homeschooling, Christian schools. I do have some other submissions. When I did my report or answered the draft questions, the classroom wasn't actually all together, and so I do have pictures. And also, I kind of did a little study. I don't know if anybody is familiar with Montessori education. Montessori is all about teaching children how to live in peace with with their classmates, but that translates as they become adults how to live in peace with other people around them, and pretty much hands-on, and that they learn self-confidence, and they just have a lot of hands-on, and it's Montessori's very much child-led. The teacher in the classroom is a facilitator, so everything they need to learn is in the classroom. And so I just kind of did a little study of the area Montessori schools. Most Montessori schools only go up through kindergarten. And in the area, even all the way out to Lawrence, there are only 5 other schools beside my school that serve all the way through 8th grade or beyond. Anything beyond that 8th grade, they're called Erdkinder or like Earth Children. It's a kind of funny name, but anyway, so, I mean, it would be, give more opportunity for children to stay in the Montessori model through a longer period of time. Let's see. And then I have the more pictures of the classroom that I've been getting together. And I wanted to thank you tonight for taking the time to hear me. And I also wanted to say thank you to Michael Farley, who put up with my 4 million questions. And I told him I hoped I didn't have to keep bothering him. I came to the neighborhood about 4 years ago after a divorce of 25 years. It was very hard and painful for me and my 2 children. And I found this neighborhood to be very peaceful. And the neighbors, a lot of them are related. And I felt like it was a very safe neighborhood, especially being a newly single mom. So it's been a place of safety and healing for me personally. And so I wanted to make that available to children. I did want to clarify, because when I had my neighborhood meeting, when it says Montessori Farm School, that does not mean I want to set up a farm. It's basically that there are elements of a farm, like I have gardens, I have my 6 chickens, I have a permit for those. And it's just to give the children a hands-on opportunity just to see, what they're learning in the classroom about how plants grow and how animals, how to take care of animals. That's part of Montessori, that they learn how to care for living things and take care of something besides themselves. So it's not a farm, even though I have cows at the end of my street and horses that ride through my neighborhood. Let's see. My credentials, I believe, are attached to the draft report. And pretty much I found myself this summer, the school I was teaching at in May closed permanently. And so what I do is so specific in Montessori. It's very hard for an elementary or higher teacher to find, because if you have a Montessori school that is, they're normally very well cared for and taken care of, and most people that work there don't want to leave. So for me to find another position is pretty limited. Let's see. I did want to note that there is an in-home daycare I live on a cul-de-sac, I don't know if you have my map, that's not, oh yeah. Off a cul-de-sac, right off of Weaver, right there on 39th. From the bottom on the street, the 4th house up is a licensed daycare, and they are licensed for 12 children. She does provide before and after care. I will not provide before and after care. So the impact to my neighborhood, most of the children are going to be carpooling together, and I will have one parent who's with me all day long. So there'll only be one car that will be, in the neighborhood at the time. And so the school's from 8 till 4. Let's see. Anyway, so it is a faith-based Christian school, but it is open to people of other faiths or no faith, but just with the understanding that that's what the school is based on. And there are, as far as elementary, I'm placing the limit at 12 because I like the low student-to-teacher ratio. So it's not a state-imposed number, but I just really don't want my neighborhood or my home to have more than 12 children at a time.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the petitioner? Okay, seeing none, we'll open up the public portion of the meeting. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of? Okay, please come forward. Give us your name and address, please.
Mr. Chairman, Commission members, my name is Sean Wheelock, 5016 Meadow Height Drive, Shawnee, Kansas, 66226. I come to you as a parent of two students who is the hope, if everything goes correctly, knock on wood, will be attending with Ms. Sanchez. I'm also a commissioner in my 5th year of the Kansas Athletic Commission, where I serve with Commissioner Burrows. That's unrelated to this, but I like to put that out.
Okay.
The school that we've known Mrs. Sanchez from when she was Mrs. Davis, going back to Oaklawn. I don't want to rehash the things with Oaklawn, but roughly a year ago, Oaklawn closed unexpectedly and without warning. When the founder of the school was arrested, closed the school immediately. No need for me to get into that, other than it was pretty traumatizing to the children, to the families. About a third of us banded together. Mrs. Sanchez was gone from Oaklawn by that point. We knew her, but she had been gone 2 or 2.5 years, completely unrelated to the arrest and closure of the school. About a third of the parents tried to scramble. We tried to have something going. Mrs. Sanchez was kind enough to come back, help to work at that school in November. We were all thrilled to have her. That school, called Legacy Christian in in Shawnee, closed at the end of this school term in May. Just couldn't make it financially. So again, we were left scrambling. My kids were again left traumatized. We spoke to Mrs. Sanchez. She's graciously taken it upon herself. They're a core group of parents going back to Oaklawn Christian Academy who are committed to Mrs. Sanchez, who are committed to the values of a Christian Montessori education, and I'd respectfully ask that you consider a petition.
Thank you very much. Any questions for this gentleman? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the audience wants to speak in favor? Yes, ma'am. I just need your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. I'm Judy Wheelock, and I live at 13748 West 65th Street, Shawnee, Kansas. I'm a retired teacher of 33 years, and I taught in Kansas City, Kansas, and Kansas City, Missouri. I'm a grandmother of 2 of the children, that is my son, that attended with Miss Laura. We always called everyone Miss Laura or Mr. So-and-so, it's Miss Laura. So I would go up and volunteer to see because I really didn't know anything about Montessori. But what I found, not just Christian values, but the fact that children learned to be independent, they helped each other, all different ages, and how happy everybody was. And both my grandchildren never wanted to be sick, even with strep throat, because they didn't want to miss school. They loved it. And I worked with her. She's such a wonderful, creative person, but yet was self-discipline, the things that you want your children to be good and kind, everything that you want to be responsible, to help others, to be compassionate, and everybody was happy. I would go unexpectedly to visit. I always picked up my oldest granddaughter every Friday, and I would go early, and she didn't want to leave yet, and it's like, gee, I wish I would have gone here, because I used to play sick, so I could stay home. But anyway, she is very, very qualified. And like I said, we've seen them because both the grandchildren have started. One is 8 and one is 12. No, 14, sorry, I meant to say 14. And they've gone to Montessori Christian School, and we've seen all the growth that they've made. And there was never any fighting. Everybody was helping, and they helped the younger children. Everybody had a different job they had to do, even pick up dog poop if that was the one thing they desired to do, to be walk the dog. So I think and you're welcome anytime. Anybody in here, any one of you can drop in at any time. You don't have to say you're coming, and you will see what a lovely, wonderful, loving place this is and how wonderful she is. Teaching them to be independent and kind and good and become a wonderful citizen. Anyway, thank you for letting me speak, and I am in favor. Thank
Well,
you.
thank you very much. Perhaps we should send Congress to a Montessori school. Would anyone else like to speak? Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Alex Sanchez, 3800 Weaver Court. This is my beautiful wife. But she has amazing qualifications to be a licensed director for 100 plus in both Kansas and Missouri. We really don't know of anybody else that has those kind of qualifications. But aside from that, it's more than just those qualifications. Excuse me. And it's really just more than the school. So just to add what's already been said, we're doing this together. So it's not school in a traditional sense. It's a school that also has a very strong family unit, very strong family backing. And that's really the foundation of what makes the school work. It's the core principal values that are behind it. So I just wanted to add that. So.
Great, thank you very much. Anyone else want to speak in favor or in opposition? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public portion of the meeting. We'll get staff comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'd recommend approval subject to the stipulations in the staff report.
Any questions for staff? Seeing none, we'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve, subject to the stipulations in the staff report. Second.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Miller, seconded by Commissioner Reasons. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Ernst.
Aye.
Huey.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Miller.
Aye.
Polly.
Aye.
Reasons.
Aye.
Serta.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to approve passes 7 in favor and none opposed.
Thank you. This will be heard once again on August 29th in this room. Good luck.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, our next case is Special Use Permit 2019-93, Cheryl Snowpack with Share Bears Dog Grooming. She'd like to operate an in-home dog grooming business with one dog at a time at 401 South 82nd Street. And there would be a maximum of 2 dogs per day. The following items are included as part of the record for this case: the city's currently adopted zoning and subdivision regulations, the official zoning map for the area in question, the city's currently adopted master plan for the area in question, the staff report and attachments dated August 12, 2019, the application and other documents, plans, pictures, and maps submitted by the applicant in furtherance of the case and contained in the official file, the notice in the Whiteout Echo dated July 18th, 2019, and the notice to property owners dated July 11th, 2019. Do any commissioners have any disclosures to make related to this application?
No.
All those for and against, please come to the front of the room.
Good evening. Go ahead and give us your name and address and tell us about your project.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Snowpack. I live at 401 South 82nd Street, Kansas City, Kansas. I would love to have my dog grooming salon in the garage. I kind of specialize in dogs that are anxious, ones that are kind of out of control, that don't really work.
You're talking about my neighbor's dogs. Yes.
That don't really work well in the big salons. I do one-on-one. I take time, give them great haircuts, clean them up, and old ones that aren't able to stand up and just kind of work with how they are. I've been doing this. I've had dogs all my life, but kind of fell into this. I was sweeping the floors at PetSmart, and they got me to be bathers, and pretty soon I was in the grooming salon. So have a knack for it, and I can talk dogs into being good, so they can get great haircuts. And I'm just excited that this will happen. It'll be my dream job.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the petitioner? Seeing none, we'll open up the public portion of the meeting. Is there anyone who wants to speak in favor of or in opposition to this request? Seeing none, we'll close the public portion and we'll get staff comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'd recommend approval subject to the stipulations in the staff report.
Any questions for staff? Seeing none, we'll stand for a motion.
Move to approve, subject to the stipulations in the staff report.
Second.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Miller, seconded by Commissioner Serta. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Ernst.
Aye.
Huey.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Miller.
Aye.
Pauly,
Aye.
Reasons,
Aye.
Serta.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to approve passes 7 in favor and none opposed.
Thank you. This will be heard again on August 29th in this room. Thank you. Good luck.
Mr. Chairman, I believe that brings us to our last case for the evening. This is the Turner Athletic Center. A synopsis for the final plat for one commercial lot and a plan review application for the preliminary and final plan review for the athletic conference for complex for Turner USD 202 at 2211 South 55th Street. The following items are included as part of the record of this case. The city's currently adopted zoning and subdivision regulations, the official zoning map for the area in question, the city's currently adopted master plan for the area in question, the staff report and attachments dated August 12, 2019, the application, other documents, plans, pictures, and maps submitted by the applicant furtherance of the case and contained in the official file, and the notices to property owners dated June 12th and July 10th, 2019. I would note that we did correct the notice error that was discovered in the previous meeting. And are there any commissioners that have any context to disclose on this application?
No. Good evening.
Good
Go ahead
evening.
and give us your name and address, and why don't you bring us up to date on what's been done since the last meeting?
Sure. David Kontag, DLR Group, 7290 West 133rd Street, Overland Park, Kansas, appearing on behalf of USD 202, the Turner School District. And with me this evening is Chris Crockett and Doug Powers with the district, and Mick Slutter, civil engineer with RIC. So since the last meeting, we held a planning, our neighborhood meeting. We had 4 or 5 neighbors come out. We went through the project, the video fly around that you saw at our last meeting, and answered questions. We did have some questions about 55th Street and areas on public land out of our purview, but we have some of the neighbors here with us tonight who would like to speak on that, I believe. But I feel like we did a pretty good job in communicating the project, how the current high school that sits on a little over 58 acres, how it currently functions, and then the additional land that's undeveloped that of the 14 acres, which would become part of the track, football field, and soccer field, how it would operate after hours of school, and events would occur at those times. And we are happy to stand for any questions, but that's essentially what has happened since our last meeting here with you all.
Okay. Any questions for the petitioner? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and open up the public portion of the meeting. Is there anyone in the audience that wants to speak in favor of or in opposition to? Let's do in favor. Are you speaking in favor or in opposition? Okay, let's go. Give us your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Jessica May, and I'm at 1940 South 53rd Street, KCK.
I'm going to have you pull the microphone a little closer to you so we can hear you. There we go.
1940 South 53rd Street, KCK.
Okay.
My issue with it is, if you go there, I know they've done the traffic study, but if you go there, it's a high school. And it is chaotic. And if you put that football stadium and soccer stadium there, it is going to be crazy. There's no light. Not at the pool entrance, not at the main entrance. And it is going to be crazy. And they're already talking about busing people in and out because the parking lot's not big enough on the big games. And it just, I think it's going to be crazy. Like, it's already crazy enough whenever the high schoolers are there without the stadiums there. I just don't see it being safe enough for the kids with the parents also driving to and from the games on game nights. And I know that school will be out by the time the games start, but then you're putting the students back at the school and the parents and the grandparents to go watch the games.
And where's everybody gonna park, let alone, get out of the game? And there's no light there. It's literally one way, there's no light. So, I mean, we had the meeting with the neighbors, and one of the principals was there, and he said that he would just have the SRAs out in the street.
And what's an
They do-
SRA, excuse me?
It's like a rent-a-cop.
Oh,
School resource officer.
thank you.
Yeah.
No offense to our police officer here this evening.
Right. They do that whenever school lets out, and it doesn't help. There's still regular accidents whenever school lets out. And whenever school is starting, there's lines into the street. So, I mean, there already needed to be a light before, and now it's even worse. It's gonna be worse once they put that stadium in there. And we don't live very far from there, and I've got a teenage driver, and I've got another one that's gonna be a teenage driver. So it's like, now I'm even more concerned, because now my kids are out there in this mess. So,
So your concern is with the egress
I'm
in and out of the
concerned with
property,
all of
and then just traffic in general?
yeah,
and
because,
the
I mean,
size
they
of the
said that they
parking
did a traffic study, but it's not steady enough. Well, of course it's not steady enough, because it's only during, when school lets in and when school gets out. They don't have an open lunch, which thank goodness. But they don't have an open lunch. But I mean, if you guys would put those strips down or something, to see whenever the traffic comes, and they said that they could increase the patrol or whatever. It doesn't matter. It's not the speeding factor, it's the traffic.
It's the number of cars.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
That's all.
All right. You'd like to speak, ma'am? And we just need your name and address also.
My name's Angela Moon, 1920 South 53rd Street. I have the same concerns Jessica has. I've been a Turner resident my whole life, so I know the traffic patterns at the current stadium and how horrible it is, and the SRAs are out there working really hard, and they try really hard. And there's more than one entrance in and out of that facility, and there's still traffic jam-packed, hard to control situation. And you move it up here where now people are gonna try parking on the street since there's not enough parking, I mean, there's just gonna be so much chaos that I think that having a traffic light and even more parking somewhere would be better than what they've proposed.
So chaos and parking are
Yeah.
your concerns. Okay, we'll get you some answers.
Thanks.
Okay, anyone else want to speak? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and call the petitioner back up. First of all, can you address for me the size of the parking lot and the concern that maybe most of the patrons will not be parking there or cannot park there?
Yes. So the existing parking lot is 505 cars. With the improvements that we're making, we're adding ADA parking spaces and making those improvements. The reason that the lot, I should say, the reason that we have 2,000 places for spectators to sit, we have 1,500 on the home side, 500 on the visitor side, is because that is the minimum size the Kansas State High School Association will allow a sanctioned event to be there. So that is a minimum size, a level that the district needs to be at to support a state event when and if those happen. And I believe the last event was held outside of the district because the existing facilities did not have enough seating. And according to the district, there are about 500 to 600, maybe at the max, persons that attend football games or sporting events here. Their hope and our hope is that with this new facility on this property at the high school that can be identified with the high school, that the attendance would go up at football games. If that should happen and the parking exceeds 505 spaces that are available at the high school site, the district has agreed, similar to what you have approved with USD 500 at their new athletic facility, to be able to provide bus shuttles from the elementary school, which is just up the street a little bit, and also from the middle school, if needed. there's more than enough parking. One of the things we talked about at the last meeting too, we came up, or generally the requirements, recommendation guidelines are one car for every 3 persons, which would be about 660 cars, 667 cars. So if the stadium did pack out, there may be, another 160 cars for a special event, for a state tournament, and a lot of those athletes arrive on buses. But if there was a need for additional parking, the other 2 schools could be used with shuttle service. I don't know if you have any additional comments on that, but, or if any additional questions from you all.
Did you want to speak, sir?
No, there's a question.
Oh, okay. Any questions for the petitioner?
It's not so much a question as, could you clarify how often a year these overflow events will happen? Because last meeting, we discussed the fact that you already have more parking than the current facility. How
Go ahead
often?
and step to the microphone. Give us your name and address, please.
My name is Doug Powers. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Turner Schools. My address is 15960 West 89th Street, Lenexa, Kansas. The current facility has less parking than the proposed facility, you're correct. And with our events in the fall, we have football, and we will host 4 to 5 home games. We'll also have boys soccer in the fall, and we'd host about 7 to 8 home events. The winter season is entirely indoors, so we'll host nothing in the winter. And then in the spring, we'll have track and field. Track and field, we might host 1 event. We also have girls soccer. And again, with that, we'd host about 7 to 8 events. With the soccer events and the track and field events, those are done in the afternoons and typically do not run into the evenings. We will have a few evening soccer games, but predominantly they're done during daylight. Football games obviously are Friday nights, so those would all be traditionally beginning at 7 and typically done at 9:30 p.m.
Other questions or clarifications? Commissioner Pauly?
Yes, for whoever would be most qualified to answer this, had anybody looked at putting a stoplight in at the entrances or at exits to the stadium?
The question is have we looked at putting a stoplight?
And go ahead and give us your name and address also.
Nick Slutter with Renaissance Infrastructure Consulting, 132 Abbey Avenue in
Okay.
Kansas City, Kansas. Yeah, we did a traffic study. We looked at the traffic volumes at the times that the activity center would be in use. They are typically on the off-peak hours of typical morning and afternoon use. And we have found out that a traffic signal is not required based on those traffic counts.
I have a question about that. You say you do them on the off hours. How do you do that if there's not a game going on or anything like that? I mean, give me the time of day you would have done a traffic study.
Well, we do it at the AM peak and the PM peak, which is
So 7:30 to 8 o'clock and then 3 to
and about 4
4.
to 5 in the afternoon.
Okay.
So that would be the amount of students coming in and out, but you haven't done any traffic studies that would replicate how many people would be coming for an average game?
Yeah, we used the 2,000 number.
Okay.
And the cars based on the 1 car per 3 people.
Okay.
And we use that number in our study.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Miller?
So are you saying that in the afternoon you did 4 to 5? 4 p.m. to 5 p.m.?
Yes.
Because school would generally be out. And so I'm just wondering if we take the number of what you're saying with the 2,000. I mean, to me, it just would seem more feasible to use the number from 3 p.m.
Well, the events at the activity center are going to be after school.
And I agree. I'm saying all those students are going to be coming back. And at 4 o'clock, those students are generally cleared out. So would that require a light if I'm asking a complicated math formula, I think, but.
We don't do math here, Commissioner
That's what
Miller.
I'm trying to.
I'm going to go to.
I'm in here trying to tie it up with my fight.
I'm going to go to the director here because I think he's got a clarification he'd like to make.
So the way that they looked at this is that when the high school was built, there was a traffic study done for the high school and said that it didn't need a light at the high school. When they look at the events that happened during the daytime while the school was there, there's still not a traffic signal warranted. In the engineering terms, they call it warranted at any time during any of the events for even when they've had a soccer game or something. And then they also looked separately at a sporting event in the evening and what those would do. And this is the same methodology that USD 500 used for their facility on 57th or on Meadowlark Lane. And, I think that the only thing that I would ask Mick is if there's in the warrants, are there any warrants that are specific to schools? Is there a lower threshold around a school than there would be somewhere else? Or are they all the same no matter what?
They're typically all the same.
And so it's, and I think that in this case, we really aren't even close to a warrant anywhere, right? We're not even 80% of what it would need anywhere. So we're really not to the point where we're even close enough to be thinking, even from our engineering staff, well, we ought to look at this a little bit closer. So in terms of what the traffic engineering numbers would say for this. Did you look at previous accident data? Because there are accident warrants as well that could be justified that would warrant a signal if there's enough accidents at that location with the school already that you could warrant a signal.
I believe so. I didn't do the study for us, and our traffic engineer did, and he wasn't able to make it tonight.
Okay.
But I believe he had worked out everything, and I do remember him asking for the accident warrants.
Yeah, I don't think they could seal the report without doing that, quite frankly. I think that they have to look at that, and our engineers would have asked that question as well. So that's kind of how they look at the existing, they didn't look at the school, but they looked at the school plus an event, and they looked at the after-hours events. So I think that, at least with the public works staff and the engineering staff that reviewed this, they were satisfied that the signal warrant they weren't close enough to even ask questions about it. If it's close, we would start asking those questions, and the school district would be saying, well, it doesn't meet the warrants. Why would you make us do this? And we'd be like, we want to protect our kids, but we didn't even get that far on this one, and we have in other locations. Are there any suggestions you would make that could make that better at that location?
I mean, we have suggested to use an off-duty officer to help direct traffic. We think that will help, especially on when a game is over, like on a Friday night, and everyone's trying to leave. We feel that would be a good solution to help direct traffic out of the site.
And in the Turner School District, are the officers district employees, or are they KCK officers?
We actually have
You got to step back to the microphone, please.
We actually have a cooperative agreement with KCK, so our school resource officer is a commissioned officer from the Kansas City, Kansas Police Department, and then we do.
And they're on duty. They're not off duty being paid by you. They are on duty.
Correct.
With an agreement. Okay.
Correct. And then we also do bring in off duties to supplement that. Our SRAs, our school resource assistants, they are not commissioned law enforcement. They're, I guess, in essence, private security. They do not carry a weapon. They're just there to take care of crowd control, those kind of parking, other things like that.
But to work in the street, maybe our officer could answer this, but you have to be a commissioned officer to work in direct traffic in public street, correct? So it would be a public on-duty KCK officer.
Correct. Yes, sir.
Other questions? First,
I have a quick one. I may have misunderstood one of the concerns that was stated earlier, but I was looking through the staff report. I don't see any mention of lighting with regard to anything other than the limitations on the event lighting, that sort of thing. Are there any changes in the actual traffic lighting, not the traffic signalization, but the traffic lighting happening as part of this project?
No changes for traffic lighting at all. There's a light at Metropolitan and 55th at the north. No changes. One thing we were talking about, there is a speed limit of 20 miles an hour during school, when school is in session. I don't know if there's enough control there to keep, for people to stay at that limit, because there's hills on both sides, as you know. But to answer your question, Dr. Serta, no changes to any public improvements or on the right-of-way.
Is there a street light right at the entrance to the school?
No.
Is that something we could add?
There's one, sorry.
Your name and address, too.
Yeah, I
please.
got you. Chris Crockett, address is, no, sorry, I just moved, 9816 Inslee Lane, Leeward, Kansas. There's a street lamp that is district-owned about 30 feet off of 55th Street on the entrance to Turner High School. That's as close as it gets. There is also a traffic signal at 55th and Douglas. So,
Other questions for the petitioner in response to the public comments? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the public portion of the meeting, and we will get staff comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Couple of things. I am going to ask the Public Works Department to take another look at the traffic study, just since we've had so many concerns tonight, and see if there's anything else they could do. I'm also going to ask the applicant to look at the lighting right at their entrance and see if we don't need a street light out there for the evening events, and possibly add a street light and maybe a couple each, one each direction or so, to make sure that the turning movements, people will be able to see people stop to turn and see that very clearly, given that we'll have more nighttime activity at that location than before. But with those two comments, I'd recommend approval of the final plat and the plan review. You can take them in either order.
I'm sorry, what, can you say the last part again?
Actually, please take the plat first. That's the order Janet has them in the notes already.
Okay, and then plan review. Okay, any questions for staff? Seeing none, we'll entertain a motion for the final plat.
Motion to approve with those additional stipulations.
Second.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Serta, seconded by Commissioner Pauly. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Excuse me. Ernst,
Aye.
Huey,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Pauly,
Aye.
Reasons,
Aye.
Serta.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion passes 7 in favor and none opposed.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion on the plan review.
I move the Kansas City Planning Commission recommend approval of petition PR 2019-16, subject to staff stipulations.
Second.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Ernst, seconded by Commissioner Miller. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Ernst,
Aye.
Huey,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Pauly,
Aye.
Reasons,
Aye.
Serta.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion passes 7 in favor and none opposed.
Okay, this will be heard again on August
Yep.
29th in this room.
No, this is
Oh, this is final.
action.
Sorry, no, you're approved.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. And that concludes our agenda, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, this meeting stands adjourned.